And now, please remember the men and women that went before you. They are the developers, and they sacrificed a lot for this cause. Raid.
The day before our flight, I got a call from somebody at Starbreeze. It's like, John Cleese is really, really angry because nobody told him he's gonna play Hitler.
This is Ilya Petrushich. He's a game developer who specializes in level design. And that's me, interviewing him. That would have been a good thing to tell him, yeah. If you're a fan of Payday, you've certainly played maps that Ilya invented. Most recently, at time of production, he worked to bring Diamond District and First World Bank into Payday 3. Going back over 10 years ago, in July 2014, he and his brother Nikica founded the development studio Lion Game Lion in Croatia, where they still work today. LGL then created a video game called Raid World War II, with funding and publishing handled by Starbreeze Studios. That game released in 2017, yet here we are in 2025 talking about it. This video is not sponsored. Starbreeze couldn't afford me. I don't have and I'm not interested in positive relations with Raid's publisher. If you're wondering why, yeah, you got 3 hours to find out. Ilya reached out to me himself, just after the whole 3 hours thing. Raid is an important part of that story, the Starbreeze story, but never the focus. Even in my own creations, Raid has taken a backseat to Payday. But today is different. Today we're finally going to see that story for another day told. Here's the gist of Raid World War II.
I want to send a message to the Führer that we can and will hit him in any way we can. As you know, funding you chaps takes a lot of gold. Make sure no Krauts get their medals.
This is White sent us. Bollocks, there's the buggers. They look the right sort of bloody Fritz. Then, first things first. Blammo! Jerry brain all over the floor.
That's going to leave a stain. Now this is a party like New Year's Eve. Here, gold galore. Take all you can.
You know, I've always considered myself the joker of this deck.
Yeah, right. Gold, sure, load up, but Krauts are gonna counterattack. I know it. What do you say we give them hell? Easy. Matches, go to the grave. Dying thing, shit for brain. It's time to make big explosion. This is in top 3 of bridges that I blow up.
Good Lord. I found another raid.
Jesus Christ!
Present for your house.
Editing other people's games is fun. Have you ever modded a game? Changed its files to introduce textures, models, entire concepts? Baldur's Gate 3 has a couple rather famous ones if you need a mainstream example. The studio can choose to support these assets if they see fit, but it's a rather delicate dance. Maybe I don't need to explain. These days modding seems commonplace enough that you, gaming viewer if you are, may have played around with custom maps or weapons in your games. Even something non-visual, like fixing configuration files for classic titles on modern hardware. But installing mods isn't necessarily what I'm on about here. Have you ever made a mod? I've dabbled, but I'd hardly call myself a modder. Some people are out there making incredible new things in old works. That feeling of playing a game while knowing there are tools available to edit it, every play session becomes a springboard for new ideas. It can be a lot of fun, but modding is not paid work. At least not consistently. It's a legally dubious territory to exist in, let alone fund. Mod work is the realm of passion, of personal investment. It takes skill, creativity, and determination, all of which can be harnessed into industry game design. And that is where Ilya Petrushich got his start working on games. At our century's turn, he was a modder.
I always knew I wanted to make games, but I was never really a good programmer. And I used to, like, way back when I was, I don't know, 10, 11, 12, I used to like make some games with my friends and like click and play and stuff like that. I remember the day when like I found some level editors for games. That was when I realized like, all right, I can just like have tools and just make maps instead of like making the actual tools or programming the actual features. I started making like levels in GTA 1. That was some of the first stuff I did. Nothing that ever got released, but I was just playing around with this editor called Junction 25, I think. But it was really fun because I loved that game, and then to be able to like make your own little city, and I got into like scripting missions and stuff like that. And that was awesome. So when FPS games started to become the norm for me, when I was playing more like Counter-Strike and Half-Life, obviously Half-Life is like my top one, and I found the editor on the disc. I remember I was so happy. Like that's how I learned English, because I had to know.
You had to learn what every tool label meant. Yeah.
Yeah, I had to learn the language to be able to make levels, because I didn't understand like you had to compile and all of that jazz. So I would like save the level, nothing happens in the game. Like what's happening? I'm typing the level. You know, because you have to compile it into a different type of file and compile the lights and all of that stuff. So I basically had to learn English to make maps. Yeah, and then I worked on a bunch of Half-Life mods, like successful and unsuccessful, and did maps for Natural Selection and Counter-Strike and a bunch of these mods. Now, obviously, when Half-Life 2 came out, it was just like a continuation of the thing.
That's interesting because I wanted to ask if there was a map, maybe in Counter-Strike, that people say like comfort levels when they're talking about a map in a game they played when they were younger that they can like remember the layout of off the back of their hand. A lot of people for that is First World Bank. There are still a lot of people who consider that like their home turf for games. Did you have a map like that?
Yeah, I had a bunch. I had CS Siege. I don't know if you remember that one.
Siege. Let me see.
Yeah, I think it was a 1.4 or 1.5. And it wasn't maybe the best level in terms of layout and balance and stuff, but it just had something. I don't know what it was. I guess the change of like outdoors to indoors and stuff like that. DE Prodigy, I fucking loved it because I was such a fan of Half-Life, and I just thought like, oh, it's you know, it's a lab and you have to blow it. It was just a nice like way to bring Half-Life content into Counter-Strike. So I really enjoyed that. Again, I also played quite a lot of Counter-Strike way back in the day, like competitively.
Oh, excellent.
And I wasn't a big fan of the dusts and the like, because there's only so many times I can play those maps, and everybody wants to play the Dust and Nuke and all of those. I always liked the more Half-Life themed maps in Counter-Strike. Nuke, even Train was fun.
It's funny how generational nostalgia works. Ilya and I can share in memories of CS maps we both played when we were around the same age, but in entirely different millennia. He got his start with the Half-Life mod called Counter-Strike, but I grew up with Counter-Strike Source and then Go years later. The same goes for Half-Life. I'm sure some of you watching have fond memories of those underground laboratories, but if you're of a certain age, the version you know may instead be the officially sanctioned Crowbar Collective remake Black Mesa, a gray area between game and mod.
I was always more into like single player stuff, so I didn't do much of the nukes. And one level I forgot is Morpheus for DM Morpheus for Unreal Tournament. Q2 DM1 also, like the first deathmatch map for Quake 2 is really good. I can probably walk through it in my with my eyes closed. Yeah. So I worked on a bunch of mods, basically, like single player stuff and multiplayer. Mostly single player. I gravitated towards like scripting, gameplay, sequences, and that's what happened. I even worked on Black Mesa for a while, like really, really early on, before it was very official, I guess is the word. I was in charge of Blast Pit way back. And just when that happened, I got my first job, so I basically had to quit that. And
You, much like several other developers for Overkill and then Starbreeze over the years at Grin, got hired in part because of your modding of things you did for the mod scene. That seems to be where a lot of talent gets pulled from.
yeah, especially back in the days, that was the only way you could have a portfolio, was to make maps or content for other games. And I remember at Grin, I knew probably 90% of the level design team from like level design forums that we hung on, and it was people that I would have been working with before in some way on some mod or something. So it was hard to get a job back then. So you had to like know people which you knew because you worked with them on a mod, or they knew you from a map you showcased on some forums before Discord and all this. I worked at the place in Slovenia called Zootfly a year before. That was my first job. And I got that also through my modding. Or, I mean, that was the only thing I had in my portfolio. So, but I got hired as a 3D environment artist. So I had to learn Maya and 3D basically, because that was my first job, and it was in a different country. So I moved there from Sweden, and I knew nothing. So it was like a big upside down where oh, we don't have tools. Because I thought every studio had their own finished engine and tools and SDKs and all of that stuff. But they didn't have it. So you basically made the level in Maya. So I had to learn to model, which I'm super grateful now, because I still do it from time to time. And that's how I know. But a year in, I had this weird feeling that like I'm not really doing the level design, I'm just doing a bunch of stuff around it. So when I applied at Grin, and it's funny, I applied to Grin, and the lead level designer was a now friend who I knew from the modding community. So I went there for an interview, and they had 2 floors, and on the upper floor they had their next game, which was like super secret, nobody knew, blah blah blah. So when and they took me to see it, and I'm like, is this Bionic Commando? Like, how do you know? I'm like, no, but that literally my favorite game ever is Bionic Commando on the NES. So after that interview, I told Bo, who was the CEO of Grin, like, just, I don't need, give me the minimum salary for 6 months. I just want to prove myself and just want to get a foot in. I just want to work on this game. And literally a dream came true.
I'm happy for Ilya, but 6 months scrambling at minimum pay? Yeah, that sounds like a deal Bo would take. Listen, I ain't going over the whole story of Grin, the company that would eventually molt into Overkill. It'd take too long to cover it. Specifically 3 hours. You'll be getting some color and context for characters like Bo and Ulf Anderson from Ilya's perspective, but I'm a gentle them and didn't pry on subjects I thought might be unprofessional. All these people still work in the industry after all, so if you want further explanation, you'll have to do the homework. Shortest possible version, Ilya joined Grin unknowingly late into the company's life. Bo had promised several major license holders games on 6-month turnarounds, all of which performed poorly. They, as happens, went bankrupt.
So I came in to work one day at Grin, and I just heard, like, on a cigarette break, we're going bankrupt. So we knew, then we had a big meeting, and we knew, like, end of the week, that's it, pick up your stuff and blah, 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 right? And I had an interview set up with DICE, basically. So I was going to go to DICE on that Friday and have a level design position interview. And then Ulf grabbed me and said, "Hi, can you come into my office for like a second?" I'm like, yeah, sure. So I sat down, and he put a key in front of me. It's like, we're going to start a new studio, and we want you to join. Like, yeah, holy hell, yeah, of course I will. I'm just going to go to DICE and say no. Like, I don't want to just ditch on them.
Yeah,
so I brought 3 other people, level designers, with me to the DICE interview, and I just stepped in and I said, like, oh, I already found a job, sorry, but here's like some real good people, and I think 2 of them actually got the job. So then the week after, we just found some fucking basement and started working on Overkill.
you chose to go to Overkill over DICE. Was it because, I'm assuming, friendships, personal relationships?
Yeah, because me and Ulf were pretty close towards the end of Grin. Like, I would work late often, and he would come by, and then we would just talk shit. And it turns out we like the same kind of music, same kind of games, and we just had some sort of friendship. And I remember calling my dad, like, I got a job offer. Oh, really? Nice. Because he was, of course, like, I got fired or laid off. But I got this other job offers. Like, great, that's 2. I'm like, yeah, but this one doesn't pay anything. Like, all right, so you should go to the other one. Like, no, but I feel like this is the correct choice. And he basically told me, like, if you need anything, call me. But if you feel it's the right choice, just go ahead, work for free, and it'll work itself out. And damn, was he right? And was I right? Because we made something real big, even though it was really fucking difficult for a year and a half to not have any. I'm happy I wasn't married or had any kids at that point. Like, our lunches used to be, we would get one portion of pesto, and we would just cook like a bunch of pasta, because pasta is basically free. You just put it in the fucking water, and then we would just eat pasta, and like you could share the pesto between the 8 people. Everybody would take a little. And when we had then other day we would have meatballs, but there was 8 of us and there was like 17 meatballs. So everybody has 2 each, and then there's 1 left. So we would like rotate who gets the extra meatball every week. It was rough at times. Anneli used to cook for us also on Thursdays for a while before she joined. She'd just bring food to the office and cook for everybody. And we just make ends work. Like, Simon would do outsource work and bring all the money in and just help everybody out, because he did a lot of music for other things. And whoever could get something working would bring it to the group. It was very underground, like Rockstar. We're all in this together kind of deal. It was nice. It was rough, but it was nice. I think me and Ulf hold the record of the cheapest lunch. Like, we used to fucking beans. I think I wouldn't give it to my cat nowadays, but yeah, that's what we used to share. Like, a can of those was like 20 cents or something. And then half of a little bread thing that we would share. So we would eat for like $50, the 2 of us.
Ilya was willing to endure abject poverty with his friends for projects he believed in. At Overkill, that project became Payday the Heist, the 4-player bank-robbing shooter I'm sure you all are familiar with. A cooperative game. Now, Ilya has some interesting thoughts on how to create single-player-esque narrative experiences in multiplayer settings, informed by his time as a modder. When other players aren't around for LAN matches and with limited bandwidth, it would just be him versus an army of bots.
Because way back you had people who would make levels either single player or multiplayer, and in a lot of development teams you had level designers, multiplayer level designers, and you had single player level designers. And I always thought of myself as a single player level designer. That's what I would always do. Left 4 Dead sort of changed, or gave me some weird oh, it's single player, but it's also I'm playing with a friend, literally. But it's single player in the sense of it has a story, an arc, some sort of pacing. Because in multiplayer, you need a good layout, right? It has to play well, it has to be balanced and all of that stuff. Whereas in single player, it just has to be fun and interesting. So when I played Left 4 Dead the first time, and we played so much Left 4 Dead at the beginning of Overkill, it was just I thought it was genius the way they made the game flow. I can play with a friend, and it's literally multi and single player at the same time. So Payday did the same thing for me, I think, and we talked about it a lot, where it is an arena. Every now and then there's an arena where you have to hold out, hold a drill, defend this, do that, wait for a timer, blah, blah, blah. But it's mixed. It's 40% multiplayer and 60% single player. I think that gave us opportunity to make a little more interesting levels. And of course it came with now we have a story and the whole narrative part, which gives them the flavor of all of these things that you're doing. So
The arena design, I feel like you squared that circle with having chambers that unlock progression areas. First World Bank has the first arena, the main bank and drill area, the second arena of the vault area, and then it becomes a progression level at the end where you have to go back through everything.
and it's funny, it comes from like budget. I knew I wanted like a couple of arenas. We knew you wanted to progress through them, in some sort of fashion, and we want to keep you in the lobby for a while, hence the drill. We want to keep you in the other place, hence the thermite. And then like, how do we expand it further? Oh, well, we'll let you backtrack. So a lot of these ideas are forced out of like time and budget, and of course creativity and the team around you. But yeah.
Having theoretically anything that you could create can be more difficult than having some restraints that force you to rule out impossible things to do.
Yeah, for sure.
Next, I asked Ilya about difficulty as it relates to the single multiplayer dichotomy.
We had like, for Payday specifically, and I remember, and it's the same for Raid, basically is like on normal, you should be able to play alone with the bots. It should be fine. But we wanted like a game mode which then became overkill or whatever you want to call it on the other ones, where it's like, okay, you need the 4 people and you need to sort of work together to make it work. That's how they were balanced. Like, and then in between it's just like a linear curve,
gradient,
basically.
yeah.
Gradient, good word.
I wonder if, on Payday 2 specifically, who had different ideas about difficulty and like player count, because there did seem to be a contention between a design philosophy of every heist should be completable solo versus playing these heists on the difficulties that actually have extra variance and things that only happen on higher difficulties in them. You have to have other players. Like, those two things seem to be in contention for quite a while.
Listen, on Payday 2, I knew everything, every single part of it, every code, every inch of the map for like up until a certain point, and then it's just a blur to me because I moved countries and I started working on Raid. So there's a bunch of, I don't know, quote unquote eras through Payday 2 that I didn't play it, I didn't, follow I just didn't have the time. But I do know that there was different people having different amount of influence at different points during the development. So it did move, and I think it became like a little too, in my opinion, it became like an RPG without all the RPG stuff. So it was trying to be something, but it couldn't be that all the way, and then it turned into a mishmash. But that's just, it's just my opinion, man.
This conversation was far less linear than my editing may imply. Ilya and I talked for a couple of hours about time spanning a couple of decades. There'll be more Payday discussions sprinkled throughout the rest of this video, don't worry. But for now, I want to round out Ilya's time at Overkill. Those budgetary constraints got me thinking about how Payday would save money on visuals by taking photos or videos of guys in suits and masks to bash into something cool later. Where did the decision for all of the Starbreeze material, to do live action cutscenes but use those elements as in-game elements, like FMV essentially, did that just come from budgetary because it's easier to film live, or was that a purpose, did someone really want to do cinematography and really want to make 8 episodes of a Payday 2 web series?
I mean, it definitely started that way, what you said last, and it was Bo that was very, and he knew Damien, so they were very good friends, and they were very into this TV series story, because we never really, when we internally talked about Payday, we never really had and I think that's why 1 and the beginning of Payday 2 was so good, because it left so much for, you could be whatever you want. We never had and then they did this and they started like this. It was just it's this group, they're cool, and that's it. There's no backstory for Bane. It's just he's in a room somewhere, he sees everything. How? I don't know.
People like talking lore. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think Bo was the big driver for that part, and I know in the end for the narratives with the president and all the mystical things.
Yeah, that sounds like him.
But in terms of trailers, there was more Tor, the trailer guy, and we did mostly in-game at first. But the in-game stuff was so difficult to make. We had no tools, so it was literally like I would set up a camera, or he would have his own team later that did all that. But it was so much production, that it was much easier for us to just do it live action. And I think the ones he did, the live action trailers like The Dentist and some of those were the Butcher one were so fucking
Butcher one was
good.
great. Yeah.
But that was a different thing. That was a very different thing from the Damien TV series things. It was basically like two
studios
tugs.
separate.
Yeah.
Different departments with similar ideas working separate from each other. That's a pretty decent way to describe Overkill's entire structure. Or, excuse me, by the time Payday 2 gets to its blockbuster success, Overkill can comfortably be called by its true name, Starbreeze. Bo Anderson's a character I'd rather not spend any more time on than I have to. 3 hours was enough. But what's important to know about him at this point in the story, around about 2014, is that as CEO of Starbreeze, he was riding high on the waves of Payday 2's brutal popularity. Sure, there was some infighting with his brother Ulf, but other than that, Bo was unstoppable. Ilya, as he said, moved countries and started his own company summer of 2014. We should all know the name Lion Game Lion. At first, their job was to make maps and features for Payday 2, contracting work to keep the lights on while cooking up their own idea for a game.
The problem was we can never launch with something and have more content than Payday 2. It's impossible. So Starbreeze was in this little trap, let's call it.
They certainly were.
Which themselves or ourselves created, because Payday 2 was fucking huge. Like even at launch, I don't know how we made that much content. So like, yeah, I'll go off and do this World War II game, and in my head was like, whatever we do, it's not gonna be even close to the content, and especially like 3 years into Payday 2 with all the fucking DLCs that we were making.
I've heard talk that Raid was at some point also conceptualized as not necessarily a roguelite game, but to have the levels come at you semi-randomly, and you would progress through them, and when you died, that would be the end of the run. You would like see how you did, get your performance tally, and then you would do another set of raids.
Yeah, it was supposed to be more focused on hardcore. It did have a non-hardcore mode in my head in the plan in the beginning, but like the main way of you playing it was when you die, your guy gets. That's why we have the the graveyard. Like
Yes,
that was
yeah.
supposed to be our characters, so you would see them like, oh, level 30, whatever you named him. So what I wanted to do was a big open world, or not a big open world, like a big city, which is like semi-open world, where all the missions would be placed
In
around the city.
world. I see.
Yeah, and we would like drive to them, and then we would switch things around. So it'd be like, go to the bank, steal the thing, then take it to the flak tower, put it on the roof, do something. But that thing could also be taken to another level. So I wanted to reuse the locations much more. And the plan was like, when we keep releasing stuff, we plop them down in the city. The initial idea of Raid was much more sinister and without humor that much. It was a little more, I wouldn't say it's serious as in drama serious, but it was like a little more like every mission we had. I remember talking about this, and the idea was like, this war happened and there's so many stories that you don't get to hear. You get to hear like the Omaha Beach, they stormed it, they won, blah blah blah, but you don't hear about the one guy that had to crawl through things to blow up the sand dunes so that they could come through. There's so many of these things, and that's what we wanted. We wanted you to be those like unknown, unnamed soldiers. Like, they blew up the bridge, therefore the Germans couldn't get to the front, so the Allies won this this battle, this fight, whatever. I still have them in a little book I keep where real people who've been in the war that have spoken like, and because when we were up in the mountains and they blah blah, they stopped one car, and that eventually made it so that, you know, the Allies could win the full war. So it's like all these little cogs that nobody is speaking about that had a great effect, and I just wanted to like tell those stories. We talked about things like, all right, I want to have missions where you help the Germans. You know, you literally help the Nazis. Like, why would you do that? Because in the long run, that would make you win the war.
Undercover missions, I see.
Yeah, like you couldn't, because you're a group of fucking misfits somewhere, so you're not really allied.
Yeah.
That's what you're fighting for, but you weren't like officially in an army or anything. And I wanted to like have the player think about these things. So I didn't want you to do those things just because, oh, it's cool if you work with the Nazis. It's more like to think about it and eventually like see the big picture and maybe not to sound pretentious, but like to get to understand like certain things happen because some people had to, you know, make sacrifices, and wouldn't it be cool if you were one of those people and the sacrifice you had to make was to, you know, do something really, really shitty.
The game originally having a darker tone, and this might sound funny to some people, but like almost a more educational tone of making you aware of the different things that were happening during World War II that are not the cool things to see, that or the day-to-day. The hoarding and using Nazi gold, all of that makes way more sense under that context of this is a continuous war machine.
But even the gold stuff came pretty late. Like
Really?
the initial idea we didn't really think about that. Like you weren't really stealing gold. We didn't care. It was more around the city, and you would do shorter missions to like get fuel, to get ammo, to get, you know, equipment and all of that stuff, because that's what you need to power a war machine.
Yeah.
And that's also again my fault, because the meta game where I had planned out was so far away and they couldn't see it, and this was just a really nice and easy and quick way of like, all right, you steal gold and then you use that gold, and you steal it and you use it and you steal more to use more, and blah 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 blah. So it makes sense. But yeah, I didn't want that. The initial plan was like to find people who came into your camp, who you fed and kept safe from raids and attacks, and then they would upgrade your gear. You would do side missions where I found, you know, 2 cases of ammo, cool, now we can do 5 more missions and stuff like that. So it was much more resource and like people management. Not people management as in you like, it was just a counter, like we have this much food, we have this many people, we have this many days. But the gold stuff came later with the influence from publishing, like, oh, we need to make it more like Payday, is when that sort of seeped in.
I see.
Because there's a lot of missions where gold is sort of just like wedged in.
Influence from publishing is a sentiment you'll be hearing a lot in the rest of Ilya's interview, but let me not misrepresent what he's saying there. It's very easy for fans of games to hear Suits in Charge fucked us over this, and publishing told us to do that, and assume that's the end of the story. This is sadly often true, but what's also true is that games are made by people, and people wear suits. Nobody is out here trying to make broken games on purpose, I should hope. It is technically possible to convince your bosses that you know what you're doing and to dole out more time and resources, if you're willing to get combative with the people signing your paycheck. But you must be able to prove your ability, your concept, to executives whose understanding of games is mostly from a business perspective, not a developmental one. Their expectations are different, enough to make you question your own expectations, because that very early concept for Raid sounds interesting, but certainly ambitious, especially for someone who describes himself as not really a good programmer. Though it's a hell of a pitch.
We basically prototyped for 4 months, maybe 6 months, and I have some old footage on my YouTube. I don't know if you've seen it, where you like drive a tank and you could switch gear inside of a mission loadout and stuff like that. The only interaction I had with the board was the pitching, because I pitched it to like the Starbreeze Publishing, to the Starbreeze Management, and to the board. And when we pitched it, we had the prototype, basically what you're seeing on YouTube, but a little more refined. Like you could drive a tank through the city. We would stream the city in and out, and it would randomize from time to time. And at that point, it felt very nice. Like, oh, they're giving me money. I have a team. I can do, what I see in my head. And then they had a bunch of problems. I also understand them too. It's like they also have to run a company, so they saw problems with our production. They had problems with other productions. Money started to, not lay around where they had like fucking gazillions of dollars as they had for a little while. So there was panics and random deadlines. I remember like, oh, you're showing this on E3 in June. We're like, yeah, but we just, we're not even in production yet. So the first 6 months were basically like, let's just finish the Flak Tower so we have something presentable, because everything was just white box and mock-up and grayscale. And then you don't want to throw that away because there's only one, a year and something left on development. So that sort of stays, and then you build a game around, like we can't throw it away. So you have to focus the game around something that's made just for this event. But, yeah. After that prototype that we did, our deadlines were changed and timing was getting more and more dire. So we just had to cut a bunch of stuff and like make it a little more Payday-like, I guess. Which, it's also my fault. It's the first game I'm directing. I was pretty bad, maybe also myself, at communicating and at driving the team and like keeping my, fuck off, this is what I want to make. Like I was very easy to change my mind. Somebody could say, I think you should do a 3-player co-op game, and I would be like, oh yeah, shit, he's probably right. I'm stressed, it's on me, and if I don't take this advice, so I was very easy to like play at that point, I guess, in my career.
I think a lot of developers hit a middle ground there where you are aware of your strengths, but you are not yet aware that other people also are aware of their strengths and are trying to use them for their vision.
Yeah, it's literally like I still, that's something that I still fight with every day, is the, what is it called? I don't know what I'm doing syndrome.
Imposter syndrome?
Imposter syndrome, yeah.
Me too.
And I enjoy it a lot too, because it keeps me on the edge, and I can't see myself go like, oh, I'll just make this perfect level because I'm blah blah blah. I always, whenever I start, in my head, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, and I'm second guessing, but I think that's a good thing to a certain degree. But being like a director for a game, I think I didn't have that at that point. Like I was very too easy to push around, and I didn't stand my ground enough to keep my vision in. And this is mostly my fault as a director, and the communication never really happened. So from Starbreeze side, as a publisher, they would get a build and they would be like, what the fuck is this? Like, it's not finished, it doesn't work, it's not, and it wasn't supposed to be finished, but there was never a communication of where we, at this point in time, you need to be in an alpha, or at this point in time, it was just like, you need to be finished in a year and a half. And we just had to re-switch and remake and cut a lot of things. So at some point, and I remember this, it was like, all right, just make it more like Payday, basically. And we didn't really have a choice, and I didn't have balls at the time, I guess is the correct word, to like, no, this is what it is, we can make it, blah 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 blah. So yeah,
such callous disregard for how long games of this scale take to coordinate, let alone develop, to the point of not comprehending what a prototype is, what an alpha is even for, all of this is just more of Starbreeze's signature managerial style, both at the time and today. Regardless of how achievable Ilia's original vision for Raid was, I believe that Starbreeze would have always hammered it back into a Payday shape at the first sign of trouble, all the while losing many of the developers who banged out Payday 2 so quickly in the first place. The biggest difference, I would argue, between the Starbreeze of a decade ago versus current era is that Bo, their at the time CEO, had personally been through the ringer with Raid's director. They share memories from their metaphorical developmental trenches. I feel it's important I say this, however I may feel about Bo Anderson as a person. In the mid-2010s, I think he genuinely considered Ilya a friend, and treated him accordingly. I understand that the studio was seeing this in simultaneously with Payday 2's ongoing development and comparing notes here and not understanding this is a new game being developed that should be separated away from this.
It was also like I told you before, like the imposter syndrome. So I would have my vision, and I was way too easy to change it because I was just so unsure about myself and having all of this on my shoulders instead of just like going with it. So even internally from the team, where we had people who maybe haven't worked on many games before, when they come in, they're like, everything is broken. Like, yeah, it's supposed to be broken. That's why we're here. We're working on it, and we're gonna finish and make it. And so I would keep hearing these things, and then when externally somebody would say like, oh no, we gotta do this and change this, I would be like, okay. I wouldn't really put up a fight, which I do regret now. But that's just life and lessons you learn. You've probably seen the first teaser we released for Raid.
Yes, I have.
The half real life action one.
Wir haben keinen Alarm der Wachen gehört. Nur laute Schießerei aus dem Innern des Gebäudes.
That trailer felt like it was both meant for players, but it was also meant for higher-ups to try and show them this is what the game is supposed to be like. Yeah.
And the masks were just, I didn't want to have them, but we had to because we couldn't find German speak. Everything at that point was like, oh, we're releasing a trailer in 2 weeks. We don't have German speakers, so we can't, we wouldn't be able to and I didn't want to have English German, if you know what I mean. So we ended up with masks, and the idea was further down the line in the trailers to start removing them and exposing these people. But you'd see that trailer and the release trailer, it's day and night, in tone, in how they're presented and in everything. So the first one is much more sinister, and you're sort of this group that they hear about and nobody really knows. You're almost like ghosts, but you're scary, they're afraid of you, but they can't show it, blah, 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 blah. Whereas, it ended up being a little more Inglourious Basterds on steroids with a laugh track.
During Raid's development, Starbreeze's breakneck momentum from the early days of Payday 2 hadn't fully died down, not quite yet, but it always felt like it could at any time. One bad community event or crossover could spell disaster for the company's bottom line at the rate they were doling out cash. At the same time, the CEO was, I'd argue, deluding himself into believing the expensive crossovers and celebrity cameos were the reason the game was performing well, instead of simply one of many factors. For proof of this, see his future projects. But when Raid was being forcefully pivoted to a Payday position, that meant altering more than just mechanics, it was marketing too. Lion Game Line are the developers, the ones creating the actual game, while Bo and Starbreeze's job was to make sure the product got finished and released on time, in any state, and then to convince customers to pay attention and buy it. And Starbreeze wanted to do things the Payday way. That meant 2-week trailer turnarounds. It meant developers being rushed along by board members who conflate beta testing with focus grouping. It meant a disproportionate percent of budget allocated to casting, with no clear plan on what to do with those performances.
Couldn't have put it better myself. Now,
I do know a big drive of people who like the gameplay style of Payday, or indeed there are quite a few people who just really like diesel engine games specifically. It just feels good to play, feels good to be in the engine. Part of what they felt was lacking from Payday was a lot of inner connectivity between the characters that was explored a bit in Payday the Heist.
trucks ready. On your mark, Dallas.
I got a visual on the transport.
Wait for it.
Ready now. 10 seconds. No fuck-ups.
But obviously, you know, only so much budget, only so much time. But Raid truly has so much dialogue. It has a lot of cross-chatter.
We made it. We're actually in the flak drum.
Indeed. Let's find a way in.
They're not expecting us. So quiet or loud? First step, get into yard.
That wall is our first challenge.
Look around. There's surely a way in somewhere.
Life is over.
Was that something you wanted to do more in Payday, or that you, because the Left 4 Dead cross-chatter is also a very good reference point for this kind of thing?
Yeah, because in Payday we, as you said, it was a budget thing, and then for Raid, I remember, I mean, it was a similar situation where we of course had a budget. The idea I had was like, if all the work is done, like I know exactly how you play a Payday, because the level design would trigger most of the dialogue, so that's what you do in Raid as well.
I see a valve! Kurgan is best at finding valves, it's true!
So I would hear these voices every day for, you know, gazillion times, and I remember like, but if I trigger a voice, why wouldn't it just be able to go on in the background, but all the other characters are chimed in?
Jolly good. I'd wager that the gas is flowing nicely. Still, I'd expect the guards here may prefer it doesn't.
The Raid dialogue is basically the same as Payday, it's just like 1.5, where we take it a bit further. I think you can go even further, of course you can, but like, yeah. I just wanted them to be a little more included, and their characters to pop through in these different situations.
Hell's bells, it's a flamer! Yeah, flamer!
That's put you out, you little bugger.
Good!
And it did also help a little bit with replayability, because sometimes you'd hear Wolfgang answer Sterling, or, you know, Rivet would say the first line, but then Kurgan would answer, so there's a bunch of possibilities of just different lines happening. Yeah.
Get rid of flare! Mortis will aim for it! Spotter should have looked the other way. Cracking shot. Fuck you, Flare!
The philosophy of voice lines being responsive to actions you take, I think works because players are more likely to be voice chat communicating prior to those actions, like saying what they're going to do or what they're currently doing. But once it's complete, you don't need to say much more than done or I did it, so it makes sense for the characters to pick it up from there.
God, good tobacco. Thank fuck.
It's both satisfying, but also it does redraw your attention to the objectives. When the characters are not just talking. Like, I do think that is one thing that Left 4 Dead got wrong, was that they had a lot of dialogue, because that game was also made in like a year. They had way more budget, so they could get a lot of writing, but they didn't necessarily know what the game was going to be. So it was just talking about what it's like living in a zombie apocalypse, and not really related to the gameplay very much.
I think that's a really good point, because something that I always noticed is that, like, when you have Bane, for example, when you have somebody, you know, screaming directions to you, it's not as great as, you know, they're talking about something cool you did.
Yeah.
So it's so much less annoying when you don't have, and in Raid we didn't have a Bane either, so we could play around with it a little more. But like, you know, get the drill. Oh guys, the drill.
Guys, the thermal drill, go get it.
I know about the drill, I'm stealthing, but you know, it's a system in the background where it's just like, there's been 30 seconds, did they pick up the drill? No, alright, play reminder, you know. Guys, the drill, the drill, the drill, the drill. We really tried to like make them as not annoying to the player. So it wouldn't be like, you have to do this and you have to do this. It's just like, it's more, you are cool, the thing you did was cool, the thing we did was cool. Yeah, I agree, it was cool, you know, that kind of stuff. And I think it's a lot, but it doesn't really annoy the player.
Reloading here.
Less talking, more doing.
The main four's cast do a fine job across tens of thousands of lines of dialogue, and here's hoping Sterling's actor, Adrian Scheidler's resting in peace. Now, I'll admit, the characters do tend to talk over each other a decent bit, but I'll take that over the silence of a stunt cast unreturned or a creative lead spurned. That's the practical reality of why these payday-type games tend to have a centralized voice over the radio, such as Bane. It's much easier and cheaper to coordinate a single voice actor than it is 4 or an ever-increasing cast, which Raid was unironically planning around.
Yes, this one. Recruit this one right away. You're getting a new raider.
And there's where the budget went. Starbreeze really thought they could just plop a new character into the game and record another several hundred voice lines from the other 4 to compensate? That Cleese clip went unused, if you can believe it. We'll get to Peeked at Parrot Sketch there in a second, but he's not Raid's centralized voice, although it wouldn't surprise me if people at Starbreeze assumed that was the case. As Elia said, the game doesn't really have a handler. The closest thing would be Mrs. White.
Well, we'll see about that.
In the 1940s, portable radios looked like this, so in-game, finding a tower to phone home is often the objective itself.
Over!
This is Mrs. White, Broadsword. Do tell me you dealt with the general and have the intel. Over.
Mrs. White and Control as characters existing, was there a point at which they were intended to be the same character, or was it always designed that you would have someone you could radio in?
Mrs. White was there from day zero. She was always planned in, and she was always meant to be not like a Bane, but more of a, you know, we as players need help, so we'll contact her, and then she talks to you. So it's a very like, almost like a mother, you know.
Okay.
She would never just like, do this, do this, do this. She's more of a, you know, a mother.
Especially on the map that is the gold treasury that's used in the campaign. If you go loud and you need to call Mrs. White for an escape plan, it has the energy of like, Mom, help.
Yeah. Help.
This is Mrs. White, reading you loud and clear, Broadsword. You'd best be calling with good news. Over.
Yeah, we got what we came for, but we're in a tight spot. A goddamn tank took out our ride home. You think it could call us a cab? Over.
Very well, Broadsword. I'll send someone to collect you now.
But Control has a funny story. Control as a character came up, I think, the 2 days before John Cleese got onto the project, which I didn't know about. So I was visiting Sweden at some point, and I just heard like, oh yeah, and then John Cleese is he's gonna play Hitler in Raid. So he was gonna play Hitler. I had no idea. I was like, really? Okay. Can I like, yeah, we're recording him like in a week or whatever in Prague. Like, oh, I should go. Yeah, so I knew a week before, and he was supposed to be Hitler.
Hitler, that short-ass crowd, this nasty Nazi friends and everything they stand for.
We went to Prague, and the day before our flight, I got a call from somebody at Starbreeze. It's like, John Cleese is really, really angry because he didn't know, or nobody told him he's gonna play Hitler. Like, he was just briefed that he's gonna be in a World War II game.
That would have been a good thing to tell him, yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so we flew in the day after, and like me and Tid, the writer, Tid Cooney, we basically rewrote all of that. Like everything everything is recorded in one day, first of all. So we got there, they had made this awesome 2 like huge sets, which they just had to like take down because, you know, this guy is not gonna play, so we need new material. And all of Control and the Hitler cutscenes and all of that is literally written in one day, and that's like 8 hours before the actual, or 12 hours before the recording. So we literally wrote the whole night, like up until the morning, so that the crew could start make changes to the set with the things they already had, sort of, and make some new stuff.
Now knowing the story behind filming, hearing how the production house Goodbye Kansas delicately describes the same series of events is remarkable.
So it was a pretty hectic week of shooting. John Cleese was just amazing. The guy's a comedic genius, and also turned out to be very collaborative and extremely professional. I mean, just a pure joy to work with him. Oliver as Hitler was a great surprise to all of us, I think.
Yeah, I bet he fucking was.
Cast quite late in the production, and he came in and just totally blew us away.
John Cleese. So I spent a weekend in Prague. He touched my face. I'm in a scene with him.
Where you're playing a dead Nazi.
Yeah, because we couldn't get like a guy, so we just like, I'll do it for free.
Oh, wow.
And I had no voice lines, so it worked out. I was dead.
Okay, so I do understand, having grown up with Monty Python, the idea that we could probably get John Cleese to play Hitler. I do think that he may have been more willing to sign on if that was the pitch, instead of, do you want to be in a World War II game? But that was a decision above you.
Yeah, and I might lie in terms of dates, but like a week, maybe 2 weeks before the trailer, I found out that he was going to be in our game. I think the whole humor thing is nice. I do think we take it a little too far sometimes. Like, I don't think that's like a joke. Like, World War II is not something to joke about non-stop. Like, there's so many things that happen that but you can throw humor, into it.
I get the idea, but at the same time, it feels like it was money spent that could have been spent elsewhere.
Yeah, for sure. But, life throws you balls and you just kick them different directions.
We can both market the game with John Cleese, originally as Hitler. Wow. With John Cleese, with this live action footage we can show in trailers and show investors, but also we can use it as cutscenes in game. And then last minute, all that got changed. Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't supposed to be that much live action of him either. Like, I don't know. As I told you, I just found out. Oh, John Cleese is going to be in the game, all right. And then, we try to
work him in somewhere.
Figure out what that would be. Yeah. But what ended up in the game was decided on and written in a haze in some hotel room, like 10 hours, 12 hours prior. So I got back into the office and so we have a new character in the game. It's called Control. We had to really shoehorn it in. I wasn't very happy. But then again, thinking about it now, it's John Cleese.
Payday.
Starbreeze got John Cleese to promote Raid. Or, and I'm sorry, Ilya, in my opinion, Starbreeze got John Cleese to keep promoting Payday with Raid's budget as collateral. That's my take on it. I could be wrong, but from everything I've heard, it sounds like Bo just wanted his British butler back and used his friend's game as a convenient mechanism to get the company to pay for pickup lines. Wouldn't it be funny if he played Hitler? And while we have him, we'll get some new Payday stuff. So, back up. 2016. Hoxton's housewarming update for Payday 2. John Cleese lends his voice to the new safe house's attendant, Aldstone.
Master Hawksworth, are you all right? Still playing cops and robbers?
What? These were recorded in a separate time block well ahead of the Control material, obviously. But then, 2017, plans for Raid go awry, Control gets invented and filmed, and now there's an opportunity to directly tie in Aldstone the Butler to Control. So later, when Cleese was called up to record voiceover lines for Control, allegedly the script he was sent contained basically no liner notes, no captions, nothing to indicate who or what he was talking about, as well as a bunch of new material for Aldstone in Payday 2. So lines for Control in Raid and his now grandson Aldstone in Payday were apparently just mashed together in a row without any labeling. Starbreeze was sitting there staring at the funny cheese man, waiting for him to say the lines, not understanding it was their job to direct him. That is a central folly at Starbreeze. Name the era. When your flagships have been propped up for years by friends, family, and jacks of all trades who've gone off, you don't know how to run your own fucking company. What your jobs are supposed to be, what the developers' jobs are.
It was rough back then because Starbreeze had a lot on their plate. They were a developer and publisher, and everything was burning, and they had a gazillion things happening, and the communication was real bad, which is weird because it's, you know, I used to work there, so it's literally like friends and family, and but it was very hectic and disorienting, basically.
It can be easier to tell just an employee this isn't working out or we need to do something else. It's harder to tell a friend that. It's harder to tell a family member that something needs to change here.
Yeah, that might be true also.
Look, Raid is not some lost messiah. It was not going to be the perfect World War II game before Bo beefed it. While I'd have loved to see Ilya's original vision made manifest, I'd say their scope was much too large for a studio's first launch. And personally, I would argue Lion Game Lion's collective understanding of player psychology at the time was fledgling. Tutorials don't change player behavior, y'all, they just inform it. However, too many of Raid's problems are unfairly chalked up to those overworked developers, many of whom, as Ilya said, were new at this, yet faced untenable deadlines. Circumstances which were created by expectation. And that's a joint communal corporate effort. Game development is chaotic business, where people's job descriptions are often aspirational as compared to their actual work. There's no easy answers, no one person, company, or thing that can be pointed to explain away Raid's unfinished condition as it closed in on launch. Throwing out easy, shorthand excuses for why games fail just means people will repeat those same mistakes. Even the old reliable line, diesel engine is bad, it's not that simple. It never is. Diesel isn't the problem. It's just a product of the problem. Throughout the course of researching games made in the diesel engine, I've come to the conclusion that the issues it suffers from are simply knock-on effects from those which Starbreeze has always suffered, going all the way back to Grin. Poor documentation and a lack of communication. Everybody's constantly in a rush. Instead of writing notes, it's faster to just jot down shorthand comments, text and code meant to be read by programmers themselves. Stuff that only makes sense to your buddy over in that department, but is meaningless to new hires. Without centralized documentation, everyone working on the game has to be personally in the know about what the engine does, how it works, its limitations and features. The company got away with this back when they had like 10 people, but as Starbreeze's size grew exponentially and the original founders moved on to other studios, any given developer's ability to stay in the loop vanished. What little archive notation has survived is often, again, buried in the code itself. So you need to already know what you're looking for in order to understand what you found. But the games work most of the time, therefore their components work, yeah? If you can't reverse engineer old features, you can always reuse them as is directly, copy-paste. Starbreeze loves recycling material, models, textures, sounds, old blocks of code, and this is not an insult, it's just an observation. I'm a fan of the tact in the abstract. If an asset has been used before and can be used again, at worst it's extra value from the labor, at best it's an intentional callback. Diesel is great at this, living la vida lua. The engine's modularity is limited by processing power more than anything. Starbreeze, if given the chance, will always take reusing material as is over retaining the staff who made it in the first place, even if they don't really know what they're reusing or why. Look, as much as needlessly duplicated work annoys me, sometimes an idea plays better in its original context. Other times, the work is flawed to begin with and should be redone. But none of this will be clear until way too late into your next game's development cycle if nobody's documenting what is possible to do and communicating what needs to be done. So instead, the publisher spends money on bullshit stunt casting to make shareholders clap, while the developers at both LGL and Starbreeze are essentially fighting amongst themselves to add quite literally competing code back and forth until the game's release date.
I'm still proud of what we did. We finished a full game with a new team where we had to hire people basically and put them into fire that production is a year and a half. That's very, very short, like to make a full game. Very, very short. If we knew we were going to make like a Payday-like thing, I think I would have leaned into it much more and saved a lot of the production time on the things we did for the other ideas and just like went, you know, maybe we could have done something. I actually told this to a former boss, like we should have just made an expansion pack. Instead of a $7 DLC, we could have made this a $15 one for Payday 2 and
You said that.
After we released, because that's what we ended up sort of, that's almost what happened. That's what, you know, people thought it was in the end. But what I'm saying is if I knew that
From
was
the outset,
what we
yeah.
would do, yeah, it would still be different. It would still be, I would have leaned into it more and we could have, you know, released with 15 maps. I don't remember who said it, but there's such a good way of describing game development. And it's literally like, imagine drawing a painting, but you don't have you don't hold the what's it called?
The brush.
The brush. So there's paint just dripping from the ceiling. So you're holding the canvas and you have this idea and you're trying to like to catch and make it work. And then in the middle of it, people will come in and help you pull and drag, and somebody will tell you like, no, more yellow, more white, more this. But you have to finish, you have to put it closer to the ceiling so it drips faster, because otherwise you're not going to be finished in time and you're not going to get paid. So you sort of don't even see what's happening, you're holding it above your head, and then you put it down and that's the finished painting you have. So it's a very dynamic and difficult thing. But it's a good description of that's how I felt a lot of time. Just like I'm moving a fucking Kansas and there's color just flying in and I'm trying to like make it work.
Sadly, I couldn't track down a source for this metaphor. It's possibly either from Will Wright or Peter Molyneux, which I know is like saying a painting could either be a Pollock or a Rothko, but anyways.
Braid started as like much more simulation. And a lot of the maps and everything we had planned was much more of that. And obviously we needed to remake the tech and a lot of the things, the tools to support that. And then at some point we blended in all the arcadey stuff. And then in the end you have like a both but also none sort of thing. We had, as I said, like we had streaming ready more or less, and we had this new way of doing the navigation graph. And navigation is something that takes up a lot of memory in Payday 2 levels. So we had ways to solve that issue. So we did develop, like that's why we did 64-bit for Diesel, was because we needed streaming. Things started to change, so we had to start ditching these things. And it's like, all right, we don't have time to do streaming, so all of a sudden, you know, all right, then we can't do this, and then we can't do this. We have to focus on this. It's very, like these decisions have big...
knock-on effects.
Have big impact, yeah. Like when we released the game, all the tweak, like all the balancing was done externally. That wasn't done by us. And it was sort of in a panic mode where again, my fault, because I think they lost any sort of trust in me as a director, I guess, or whatever. So it was like 18 cooks around the soup, just throwing shit in. After release, we sort of regained control and started to get it to some place we wanted it. I always had problems with it because I never saw it being that kind of game from the beginning. So it was very difficult for me to like balance it as Payday is. Because I didn't want to make Payday. I wanted to make a Payday-like, basically. Because the initial idea wasn't like 30, 40 enemies on the screen. It was more 5 or 10, but they were, you know, different and more. It was the same seeing 5 guys on the street as you would see 30 in the current game. It was difficult for me to balance and work on that, and it was both like mentally but also physically. Just like we had, I don't know, 6 people maybe pulling everywhere, and I was one of them.
I see the snowball effect too of, well, if this game is going to have this many enemies, we can't have big complex maps with complicated navigation data because that will affect performance when this many enemies are trying to navigate. So we will simplify the levels and simplify the scale of the levels.
Just as I said, like, it's a fucking canvas and the colors just keep raining, you know, you just have to move it.
Critical changes to the project not being communicated is a top-down problem. But when among colleagues, it's also a two-way road. Ilya repeatedly emphasized his wish that he had more clearly communicated his ideas for the game's difficulty and tone. Yet, I nearly found myself taking another easy excuse. The game did take a slightly sillier tone, unfortunately, because of higher-ups. Well, I say higher-ups, people really do use that as like an excuse of like, they're as if there wasn't anything else that could have been done, but...
And that's something that took me years and years, because it's, again, for me, the easiest, I was asked this recently in, you know, the context doesn't really matter, but like, oh, this, you worked on all of these things, how come this didn't do well? And I remember like having a short pause in my head, and it's a person I really, really respect, and it's a new friend, and I just said like, because I didn't do my best, like I didn't do everything I could. So, and it was maybe one of the, it's not the first time, but like it was the first time I was so open and like, what's the word? Like easy with it. It's my fault, because, and it is, I'm the director. Like there was 100 things I could have fought more. I could have, you know, flown to Stockholm and keep fighting. Like no, give us 6 more months and maybe we'll, you know. I was just experienced. I was under a lot of stress. It was the first time I had all these people who have families and kids, and you know. So whenever somebody said like, oh, but the money, and I was like, okay, cool, we'll make it like Payday, fine. And I would go back and then fight my team instead, you know. We have to, and it's easy for me to say like the higher ups, just as you said, or the publishing, but it's equally or more my fault, because who knows, maybe, you know, maybe I could have fought and gotten fired instead, or maybe the project could have been cancelled, whatever. But yeah, I should have fought more and been much more clear with my vision, I think. Yeah, because selling the vision, I remember when I pitched it, it was like all around happiness. Everybody was super happy. Yeah, fuck, you go ahead and you start making that game. And we started the prototype, and when we showed the prototype, it was awesome. Like, it was really cool. And then Starbreeze had some issues and time frames and blah, 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 blah. But in the end, it's, you know, if the game was good, I would say, yeah, it was my idea. So, same thing goes for if it's mediocre or bad.
How did you find out about Raid, viewer? Assuming this video wasn't your first introduction, I'll give you a second to think about what influencer, feature, or friend made you aware of its existence. I'm willing to bet that quite a few of you knew Raid for a time as the World War II game with John Cleese in it at most, with a dash of, it's like Payday, isn't it, to boot. That's the reputation Starbreeze's marketing inflicted on it. Raid got a single gameplay trailer that I can find, sandwiching a HUD-less beta gameplay interstitials between pre-roll of their celebrity cameo, so all you can really infer from it is vibes, I guess, and the graphics, which were pretty bad. Shit, these comments about Raid looking like a PS3 game, you may think they're being surface level, but I can't blame them. This trailer ain't giving them much else to talk about. You, the viewer, by watching my video this far in, already have context for Raid's general gameplay style, basic mechanics, stuff which can't be sussed out without their associated UI elements. The commenters on the trailer weren't given any of that. They just see another war shooter, but with stiff animations and washed out color. And then Payday 2 is there for the corollary. So with the marketing budget going for the full Monty and little else, who was supposed to be promoting Raid? It's overworked developers dashing between conventions and, me, and a gaggle of other content creators. Starbreeze, as was tradition, relied on YouTubers to promote the game themselves. During the adpocalypse, by the way, so real inconvenient timing considering the subject matter. Aside from the occasional giant channel making an obviously sponsored piece, this approach meant that the bulk of promotion for Raid was coming from Payday people. I know, I was one of them. By having direct crossover connections with Payday 2, by marketing via YouTubers known for playing Payday 2, by having so much of the game rely on Payday 2's very existence, players expected cross-progression. Beyond acknowledgement of ownership of both titles, Payday players assumed the games were directly related. When streaming the game at the time, I was asked if unlocking gold in Raid would somehow give you cash in Payday. As if there'd be some vault in Washington, D.C. with all that Nazi gold the Raid gang stashed away. And when those players found out the games were separate, their interest would wane. Who can blame them? With hundreds of hours and DLC dollars invested in Payday 2, why give up on all of that to start again in a game with less content? Payday 2 is this weird, gargantuan X factor of it is the prototype live service platform that game developers want, of players feel like when they make progress in something, it should be reflected in the game somehow, so they want to play more things related to the game. And then to add the butler into Payday 2 and very directly tie these two things as if to say one relates to the other. Like, you've taken responsibility for some things today. I really want to make clear that was beyond you, and that was one of the really hurting factors of the game, was players expected cross relations between the game. They expected progress in Raid to somehow affect Payday.
Yep. I think that's like there was 8 co-founders of Overkill, and there's I think only 1 left at Starbreeze now, and at some point there were 2, and then 3, and then none. There was always at that point, or not at that point, before that point, there was like started to get into 2 camps where like certain people wanted to not have those things, and then certain people wanted to have those things, and then like I left because I didn't feel that was the right direction. I think some people felt like, oh, we have this community, we can do, we can sell them other things. I never thought that would work, and a lot of us didn't. So we left. But I think, yeah, but it's also this like, I don't know what a good word for it. I don't want to bash those people, because like, we did something great with Payday 1 and 2, and like Payday 2 is huge. It's probably one of the, 15 biggest games the last 20 years or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's huge. It's humongous. And then, it got to some people's head, I think, and they thought, oh, we can just, if we market Walking Dead to them, But why would bank robber? Because I see Payday community as bank robbers, like LARPing.
Yeah.
Not in a bad way, but like.
No, you're right.
That's what they buy. Yeah, they're buying that fantasy, right? So why would they want to shoot zombies? That's another community. That's something different. And sure, there's probably a bunch of them in that Payday group who like zombies as well, or like football, or like this and that and blah 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 blah. But like they're here for bank robberies. So leave it to them. But yeah, it was very, at that point, like a lot of the co-founders started to move around. Ulf and Simon did their thing. I was on board with them actually from the beginning on 10 Chambers before I moved to LGL, and some other people left and did other things, and some people stayed at Starbreeze. It's just like they grew apart because of differences. To your point, like I fully agree. Like you can't sell it to those people in that way. I don't think. I mean, obviously it didn't work out, but the chance for it to work is very little also. So I found it very weird at that point that was the decision.
What you now have as a result of a frankly quite similar thing happening to Payday 2 is Payday 2 got further away from what Raid was focusing on, and Raid for a while stayed the same and then started to hone in with more recent updates on its own vision. So now it does have its own identity separate from Payday.
Like the Payday community expects basically what you give them. And then every instance after they expect a little more. And I don't think that's, that's what I expect. I play Half-Life, it's fantastic. And I want Half-Life 2 to be, more, bigger, better. And then they do that. I think that's fairly normal. Payday 2 is very different in that way that it's, it's been around for fucking 13, 14 years. So it's a little different to maybe judge it in the same way, but I don't know. I think and especially Starbreeze marketing Raid in that way to the Payday community, we fell into that trap. And I fully understand people who play Payday who then got Raid felt like, the fuck is this? It's not better, it's not more, it's not different enough. So I don't really think you can fault the players.
If you're feeling nostalgic, I've linked a playlist here containing my Raid videos dating all the way back to the beta, covering the launch and early updates, which weren't so much fixing the game, but rather finishing it, finalizing features once left in near-complete states. Starbreeze, to their credit, contributed more to development than just Payday-style difficulty balance. They also added a literal Payday 2 level, the jewelry store, now with Hitler's own art slapped all over it as an outlaw raid. I'll take the extra map to play on, don't get me wrong, but that kind of design reuse without Ilya's input got me thinking about another level in Raid and its similarity to a more recent Payday game. It seems like you've had a couple of maps that you've done in games that you will do a slightly different, and I would argue better, version of a lot of the similar concepts years later. Are there some core map ideas that you had? That one of the ones I'm thinking of, did you happen to design a payload style map that became Rheingold Day 3 in Raid? That's the third, where you're escorting the truck over the train wreck bridge.
I always wanted to have payload. I don't think I did that one in Raid. I probably had something to do with it because I had my hands on most things. But I think before that, one thing that I really pushed for and that we made for Payday was the Hoxton. Is it called the Hoxton Breakout when you save him and
escort the truck?
Yeah. So, and there's a bunch of levels in Payday that never got in Payday 1 that never got released that had these kind of things that I always you move behind a car and there's ammo in it, and if you move too far away, then you lose the ammo. I don't know why it just.
Yeah, like Countdown. It's satisfying. It inherently encourages the player to stay near the objective and to move when they otherwise already had a good position.
I think both Countdown and all of those levels that we made, I think there's so much room for improvement. It's just we never got the time, so I wouldn't say no to try to have another go at one of those types of levels.
The heist in Payday 3, Road Rage, quite resembles that same level design of escort the truck on the bridge, protect the gate, get to the end, complete objective, and then leave. I think a lot of games these days might get in their heads a little bit with level design of something that's already been done before, trying to do something new, when there are certain fundamentals that just work. You can just make the same map again sometimes. You really can.
Yeah, and there's so much stuff I think you can make within the same theme.
Yeah.
Where you can take it to a bunch of. I'm not saying we did that. I think we did a fairly bad job on the silo level in Raid, for example. I think that could have been a much better. I think the Payday 3 one, for example, I do like it, but I think it's the same there. That could have been executed much better. Not that I had anything to do with it, but just.
Okay, I was wondering.
If I had, I would. Yeah, I would probably remove. One thing I think we did bad, and I think they did bad on that Payday 3 level in particular is like, if you have that, if you have a thing and you want the players to move with it, you have to make it like valuable. So you can't have too much cover too close, because then I'll just go and cover right over here, you know. Yeah, I think basically both of those levels suffer from this same thing. Which is funny, because the first one we did for Payday 1, called Walkout, that never got released, we did it the way I think it should be done, but then it was very difficult to execute. So it might just be that it's, you know, very hard to balance.
Walkout, was that perhaps the escape with gold through a city one that there's like...
Yeah.
Okay, because that's considered like lost content or like cutting room floor content. The dialogue strings for that are still in the game.
Yeah, and it's a level me and Ulf always wanted to do. It's basically the 44 minutes documentary, the LA, the two guys in LA who like walked with a car. That's why it's just called a walkout, because we just wanted to recreate that basically.
You've solved the mystery for quite a lot of the Payday, the heist community there, wondering what that was going to be.
It was supposed to be literally that, like the bank heist is already over and you're just trying to move the car.
Like how Heat Street's after the job, it's the escape that's happening. Raid is also very good about that. I'm going out of order here a little bit, but it's all right. They're like, there's a lot of missions that are gold something in Raid. I think Gold Rush, the treasury that you bomb and has a lot of gold in it. That mission starts from a failure point of someone outside of your control. They fail to bomb the bank. You have to go in yourself, and that sort of drop you in at the part of the action that's actually interesting to play, so that you don't have to sit there and play through failing certain steps. It'd take a while, but after Countdown and the cinematic adjacent Kelly raids were added and another Outlaw raid, the game finally got a completely new mission. This very year, 2025. Full Stop, a level which started with Ilya taking yet another Starbreeze added map from launch, the coverless clusterfuck that is Hunters, and building it into something, frankly, worth playing. The base geometry was all replaced by the map's final release, but layout-wise, I still picked up on the conversion. Raid has thus far been very good with the new updates of, like, I made a joke about this before the stream. I didn't realize how right I was, how much that Full Stop started as, let's put a castle in Hunters. Like, but that's great. That is an excellent idea. Like, you have a castle, you have Hunters, let's make something out of it.
And that's literally like my modding brain kicking in. Like Payday 1, when we started, there's so much content from Terminator, from Wanted, from Lead and Gold, from whatever other projects where we had stuff. So, and that's just my brain, like, because the alternative for me would be to wait for content for 2 months or 3 months. And again, they're like, I can do whatever I want. My brain just shuts off. But the modder in me goes like, oh, I have these things. So what could I make with these? You know, so I've always worked like that. That's how I prefer to work. And Payday 2 was similar. Like, we did more new meshes, of course, but a lot of things in Payday 2 came from existing things that I, like, what can I do with this? Oh, if I turn it around and blah, 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 then all of a sudden. And a lot of times we would change the graphics in the end. Sometimes it would be there still. And that was what happened on Full Stop. I would just like now, if I'm not talking to you, I'm either working on my Half-Life level, which I'm still working on, or I would work on something raid related just for fun, like it relaxes me. And I was just like, oh, if I take this terrain, or what could I do with that, blah, 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 blah. And then, you know, Rex came in and remade the terrain at some points, and people start adding things and changing things, and it ends up as a level. But I love the, like, you have a box to be creative in, like limited. Yeah, it's good. It's easier for me to be creative that way than I can do whatever I want.
With modding, with creating mods and then getting hired, there is also an expectation that's happened over the years that feeds into, I think, a very toxic archetype of, if it doesn't exist in the game, modders will make it exist in the game, which then leads to, if modders can do it, why don't the developers? And I don't I think there's just a complete lack of understanding as to labor and also the basic process of developing a video game. It is still difficult, but overall easier to spend your free time adding pack files to a thing than it is to change something that other people are also going to be working with. Like, if somebody disagrees with a change you made, you aren't destroying the project if you're a modder, but you might be if you're a developer.
Yeah, exactly. And being a modder and being a developer, I see that from both sides. And like, I've heard it so many times where it's like, oh, but the modders did this, so why couldn't the developers? Like, and I'm talking from my experience, it's never like, you know, that our programmers Overkill couldn't do something a modder can. It's just, it wasn't in our vision, it didn't fit at the time, or we didn't have the time, or we didn't have the budget. It's just like, it doesn't mean that they can't do it. And then modding is fantastic in that way, that you can do whatever you want. You know, here's a Payday game that's single player, here's a Payday game where, you know, with zombies or whatever, all these new things. But yeah, I don't think it means that the developers can't do it. And listen, I use mods for whatever. I play a lot of Minecraft recently because I have a 6-year-old, so and it's so nice to just be able to, like, again, Minecraft's been around, so you can go like, I really like farming mods Minecraft, and there's like a gazillion, and you can just pick and choose whatever you want, you know. It's really nice. It doesn't mean that the developers can't do more farming. They have their vision, you know. So I think you should see it as like, there's a whole other basket of goodies that you can choose and pick from, instead of, why can't all the baskets be in everything at once?
Modders really are capable of incredible things, huh? More on that in a bit. It's taken several years of updates, but Raid's in far better shape these days. On PC, that is. Console updates would be a miracle. I didn't realize just how much the game had improved in general since 2017 until looking at my old footage. The stupid texture smearing and color warbling Diesel does for Payday has since been disabled. It's like cleaning your glasses, instant improvement. And let's not pretend the game didn't execute on at least a couple of its unique ideas. Despite being machined into a Payday-like, some of Ilia's original concepts managed to make it through. In Raid, the Reich has its reach but is spread thin. Realistically, the weakest points of an authoritarian government are its overreach and incompetence, leaving many facilities, bunkers, and air hangars penetrable to small ground forces. The player's personal knowledge of World War II era technology and strategies can exist in parallel with the game's objective flow, using randomization for an extra kick of interactivity. Now, I mentioned the radio, looking for a tower or wiring on a building which would indicate communications tech, but there's more than that. An occasional bridge or barricade which can be blown up with dynamite, not just as a requirement, but instead based on your own judgment. Is that bridge useful enough to you as a player to risk letting a tiger drive over it? On Amber Train, when you connect the wagon to the train, you hook up a coal chute to load it up enough to escape your pursuers with distance. However, that's not all that goes into getting a train running. You have to attach it, secure it to the track, remove blockers, open the door. All of these are objectives which will be told to you by the game only after loading up the coal, but you can do them anytime beforehand. If you remember the mission, or if you just understand the broad strokes of how to get a train running in the 1940s, the game rewards you for thinking ahead. As Ilia said about the war effort, small strategic operations add up to support the main event. And those forgotten soldiers leave little behind but their dog tags, which can be reclaimed in many raids. The more you bring back, the better your reward on mission complete. On launch, the dog tags were pixel-hunting nonsense, subdued metal blending into foliage, near impossible to spot without a guide. Picking them up took a long interaction instead of a quick button press, and your character would stop saying their mission-critical dialogue to instead solemnly, silently play an empty voice line cue. Nowadays, you can just snag them right up to keep walking and talking. There's a particle and subtle sound effect so you won't pointlessly comb over cleared areas. Each of those changes came at a different time across Raid's years of post-launch development, but all combined to turn an irritating mechanic into one some players are actually willing to engage with. The game we have today is a far cry from Raid's launch. In fact, I'd go so far as to say if Raid as it exists today had been the version players had on release, I don't think it would have flopped. It instead have found itself a niche audience of history buffs and COD Zombies veterans. Entire core systems have been scrapped and rebuilt. Look, this is how the game used to handle skills. Linear with basic choices, boring and a bit shit. Now we've got all of this. Proficiencies you can pick and choose that earn XP to grow more potent. An overhauled feature-complete system. This is a lot of updates for a game Starbreeze are barely interested in supporting. And it didn't happen overnight. As Ilya mentioned, working on the title can be a challenge for him, both mentally but also logistically, considering Starbreeze owns half the game's rights. Lion Game Lion isn't a one-man team, of course, but these past couple of years, support for Raid has actually been coming in from some allied forces. So, to see Raid still getting updates, I wanted to know if that was like a decision that was made out of let's get back to this, or if it sort of like happened under you from the modding community and then was brought to you as an opportunity.
First of all, it's very humbling and real nice to have it be back, because we did try after release, like we did, I don't know, 19-20 updates, you know, just to try to get it back, or to keep it floating. So when that realization came, like, all right, that's it, you know, it has to go to the side, we have to continue to live as a studio, blah, blah, blah. It was hard to just let it go, because I didn't feel like I got to do maybe what I wanted to do with the actual game, but then also I didn't feel like I got the chance to like save it, or whatever you want to, not save it,
but to make the best of it.
Yeah, at least like to a point where I could be like, all right, cool, now, you know, I'm happy with it. So when the modders, Leon and Rex and Xelatron contacted me.
Was I 18, 17? I don't remember. Naive kid that's just like, let me just email info@starbreeze.com and like ask them like, hey, you know, Payday 2 is getting older, you have modeling plugins for Diesel and you don't really plan to use Diesel anymore, could you release them publicly for the modding community, right? Like, why the fuck not? Let's just try that. And that actually started, like at Starbreeze, started like an effort to see what tools they could release publicly for the community, like Diesel modding tools, essentially, like official modding tools. Anyway, the tools that they gave to people didn't work. They just didn't work. The model files that they wrote from Maya were double the size than what the game actually read, and in a completely different format. But nobody knew why. The tools were just useless. And Matt then also told me at that time, because, you know, the tooling didn't work, and I was pretty down at that point, because it all didn't work. You know, there's this guy, Ilya Petrusic, who worked on Raid, with a creation studio called LGL, Lion Game Lion. And you should talk to him, because they also made like modeling tools at the time for a different modeling software, so maybe they have some answers for what you're looking for. So then I started talking to Ilya on Discord, because he just has to open Discord DMs, right? So unlike Starbreeze, I didn't email him, I just DM'd him on Discord. And I said, hey, you know, Matt told me about you existing.
At first I was like, I have to talk to Starbreeze about everything, and talking to a publisher takes a while. You email, you wait, and these people keep bugging me in a good way.
They started looking for the source code of the engine, because that's what was needed to make that tool, right? And it was COVID, so LGL had moved offices, some computers were sold, old servers were not accessible or just gone or lost. So they didn't have access to the source files easily. And while they were looking for the source files, at some point Ilya said, well, you know C++, you know programming. If once we find the files, we can like figure out whatever the legal is on what I have to sign so they can give it to me, and I can just make the modding tool, the model exporter that I want to have made. Ilya found like old servers in a random storage closet in the office they were in, and sent me a picture of them, and was like, oh, these are like and told me like, oh, those are the old servers that we had in the old office that we used for Raid. So then I, over Discord,
Leon would literally sit with me on screen share and like open the server, and there should be, because he's technically gifted, he's a programmer, he knows these stuff probably better than me. Not probably, definitely. I'm just a designer.
Together we looked on it, and I remember I was going home from somewhere, I think it was vocational school, because I was in my apprenticeship at the time. Yeah, I was sitting in the tram and looking at my phone, and then Ilya sent me a picture of the server being booted up with like the source code files, and I smiled so hard at that moment, like seeing the lost source code being found again, right? And right around that time, like literally right when we found the, like a week or so before we found the source code, some people in the Steam forums were saying, oh, they can't play Raid on 13th gen or 12th gen, I think 13th gen, Intel CPUs, because it's just not booting, it's crashing. And now that we had the source code, we could see, oh, it's because of a crash in, like, it's a divide by zero issue because it tries to read some CPU value that the modern Intel CPUs don't provide anymore. And with the source in hand, Ilya asked me, hey, you know, because you have this now, could we do like one last update for Raid, like a farewell update, an update 20, just fix that bug so people can at least boot up the game, even though it's not successful, but we can at least boot it up. And that kind of started the whole chain of doing stuff on the game.
Basically, they helped us fix a bug that was really annoying, and we literally released something like through screen share of Discord. And then somehow somebody got the idea of, we'll just do an NDA between us, so I can be open, they can be open. And I literally took the physical servers, which are like 0.5 meter and they weigh 50 kilos. I would put them on a FedEx thing, and I've sent them to Germany, and then he set up a bunch of stuff, and we now have like a full working environment where they have the full code and everything, and I trust them. And in a bunch of ways it's good, because, and I've talked to a bunch of people who would tell me like, why would they want to do this? Like, they're doing this for free, and I would tell these people like, the first thing that pops in my head is like, I don't know, if they have fun, they have fun. But then I would think back when I was a modder, you know, if Valve would send me the Half-Life stuff and be like, oh, you can, you know, here's some stuff from I'd fucking be over the moon. So I do understand, I might not understand that there's such big Raid fans, but they're Diesel fans and Raid fans and Payday fans and whatever, and you know, it's cool for them, it's cool for me, it's cool for the community, and it's great for the game. So I just try to help out as much as I can in terms of, I'll make a level every now and then, or an idea, or you know, pinball something with them. But they're driving, and they're doing a fantastic job. Big thumbs up for Rex, for Xelatron, and Leon for carrying the flag and honestly doing God's work. They're amazing. From knowing them, I think they'd be happy to also talk with you.
Okay.
So if you find it interesting, you should definitely reach out.
You know what? I think I will then. Who are the Mug team? Rex, Leon, and Xelatron. Together they have a combined decade plus of experience modding games. That may not sound like much, but think about where Ilya was at when he got his first job. MUG stands for Modders Updating Game. It's a backronym in reference to the funny mug Raid influencers got sent in loot boxes pre-launch. Starbreeze handled it the wrong way, as they do. These three gents are Raid's current active developers. Lion Game Lion folks still contribute work, Ilya especially, but MUG are the ones actually implementing new features. Bug fixes, enemies, maps, weapons. They're more than just modders. They're updating game. I took Ilya up on his advice and approached them for an interview. And where better to conduct it than in the very game they've kept carrying on.
I realized the mistake I made with not preparing. Because I already launched a beta where we did the user manager changes, so my save file is broken now.
Your save file is fucked. Great.
Oh no! Well, hey, if it makes you feel better, that's what happened to my save file. That's why all my characters reset.
We even have dev saves that are like separate from release saves.
Yeah,
but as soon as we move the game to a Steam branch and then play on Steam, it's the Steam saves. So at that point.
Yeah, I can replace Steam saves. I just need to
Yeah.
disable the cloud.
Where are Rivet's legs? I want to start with a similar question I did with Ilya, though, because when I asked him this, he opened right up. You all got your start in various ways modding games, right?
Yeah.
Yep, pretty much.
What were your, when you were younger, other than the obvious Diesel games, like games that you played as a kid or maps that you played as a kid that you went to over and over again, like this is my playground, this is my turf?
I'm 21, I am younger.
Oh, sorry, wow, okay, hang on, I need a second. You've accomplished so much more than I ever will.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's good, it's good, I'm glad to see.
For me, Payday 2 was always like that thing that really got me back into modding. Because I did stuff in 2017, just smaller stuff, nothing public. And then when COVID hit, or even before, I think like 2019, 2020, that's when I really got back into like doing stuff for Payday 2 and trying to learn like new things, modeling and stuff. Because the game was so easy to approach compared to others when you modified. And for me, it was also Minecraft. I made like Minecraft plugins and stuff. That's my legacy, so to speak. When I was like 12 or 13, I made like my first Java plugins for servers. I found a Minecraft Java plugin that I made back then for like a server. It's just a simple command, like it just prints in chat, oh, you can buy VIP at this Skype username or something. And it has like code in it to have a secret command that can OP me via server console so we could grief the server overnight. So yeah, that's how I started.
Yeah, you wouldn't do that anymore, right?
Yeah, nowadays life's different, right? But back then when you're like 12, 13, you think that's funny. Because when you're 12, 13, and all the Minecraft servers are also had by like the small ones are also had by like 12 or 13-year-old people, you're very easily hired as a dev, because like what, you're 13 and can code, you're hired.
At that age, the most coding I was doing, because I was an idiot kid who thought like, oh, I can type this into Notepad, I don't need to look up any more about how to do code. I made a text-based adventure in Batch script that I called Progression, where it was just a bunch of randomly generated events that would happen in a line, like you found a town, it's named, picks a name from a list, enemy in town, attacking town, all randomly picked stuff, and making that and sharing that around, and people telling me, no, I'm not going to actually run a random batch script you sent me, made me realize, like,
my friends
that's
that
probably
back then
important,
always did that mistake once, and then they never ran anything I sent them. But they always did once, before they knew that that's a bad idea.
Well, I had a kind of long road. The earliest thing I can remember modifying, there was a game called Icy Towers.
Icy Towers?
Which was like basically a very simple game where you had to just jump upwards. It was basically like a mobile game before, you know, those existed. This was like, I don't even know if it was like 3rd grade or something, and this was like a Windows XP game. I think it was on Linux as well. It was basically just you had to jump upwards on a tower and the camera keeps going up. But if you ran really fast on the edge of the screen, you could do like combos and like spin upwards and stuff.
Ooh.
And that was basically the whole thing. It was a really simple game, but because it was so old, you know, it didn't have like bundling or anything. It was a 2D game. So all the sprites were just in BMPs. And then this was on a class computer, so this was, you know, early 2000 when like computers were started getting added into classes. So we had like a teacher who was very like tech savvy, and then she added like a bunch of games on it, and yeah, that was one of them. And then the whole class just started like reskinning the little dude that you played as, like a bunch of characters. Before smartphones, but when like phones were getting better and, you know, you could have like Java games on them, there was also another game called Gravity Defied, which was like a little motor racing game where it's like a stick man with like a stick level, and you had to just go through the whole thing. But someone found out on the internet that there was a level editor for it.
Ooh.
So then the whole class started making levels for it, unpacking the jar file, because it was a Java game, so unpacking the jar file and extracting the files, like replacing all the textures, changing the levels, and then just recompiling it and sending it to other people in the class. So we did that for like months and months. Back in the day as well, Postal 2 shipped with the level editor. So Postal 2 shipped with the level editor, and I was trying to figure it out, but it was really confusing for me as a kid, because I placed like a brush down, and then when I loaded level, Postal 2 just exploded. And I could never figure out why that happened, so I could never place down geometry. So what I ended up doing in a way, because I replayed Postal 2 a lot, because I didn't have internet on my own PC growing up. And I rarely got a new game, so anytime I got a game, you had to just play that for months, because that's all you had. So I started like replaying it a lot, and I wanted like, I don't want to go through the whole part again, so I just started like placing warp zones around the levels to teleport to other parts of the map, so I can replay it quicker.
You sort of encountered a very funny reality of game design at a very young age there so yeah, I did everything correctly, but it doesn't work and it blows up and breaks. What do I do about it? Not sure, we're just gonna have to work around that. Like, that's just gonna be there now.
Yeah, exactly, because I was like very young. I didn't know English that well. I didn't have internet on my own PC, I had to go to my dad's. And there was like very limited time on it, so I could never like Google how to do it properly. I tried to watch YouTube videos, but YouTube videos are like really low quality and badly explaining everything, so I could never figure it out.
How did you get your start modding, Rex?
I think I didn't really have much internet, so the only games I played were like console games, so I never had editors. And eventually it got to a point where I had some internet, so I think I was just playing Gmod. So that's how I started learning like level design, because I also played like Call of Duty Zombies, like Black Ops 1 Zombies. That I enjoyed a lot. So in Gary's mod, I would just go into levels and just start imagining them as a zombie map. So I imagined how that layout would work in a different game mode. Sometime after Payday 2 released is when I actually discovered Payday 2, obviously. But a year after that is when I actually got into the modding. But it was really basic texture modding that I'd do.
It was in the same boat, yeah.
Yeah, you got really quick. I remember you started and like very quickly your skins were already accepted in the game.
Oh no, I'm talking about like texture mod overrides. But yeah, when they did started doing workshop stuff, I had been modding the game to actually implement those skins that I was working on, because I already knew how it worked just by poking around.
One of the things with Diesel, or with what Payday started having and what we have now as well, is just the idea of having this mods folder that can accept the file, just a plain file, texture file, without needing to package it, is I think what sells it there, right? Like, that's accessible. There's no tool you need to download to package up your mod and then distribute it and compile it, or you just place a texture, and then once you place the texture, you can, obviously you have to find it, but a lot of people just download an existing mod and edit it, right? Like, oh, I want to change the cloaker sound, so I'll download some random cloaker sound mod, and then it's like, oh, I need to convert it to this thing, okay, done, bam, works.
Sounds were a little bit more complicated, but yeah, like DDS textures were really easy to do.
Even the BLT mods are like that, where you just download it. And that's how I started with the Payday modding. I just downloaded some Lua mod. And I used Lua before with Computer Craft in Minecraft. So I had some idea, but it was like never an idea of like I know what I'm doing. You know, I know how to do stuff in it, but I don't understand what anything does.
In my case, I was horrible at programming. I didn't know how to get, like, I knew how to edit some of the Lua mods, like the values, to change them, and I copy pasted some code and edited things. But I didn't know how to write Lua, or how it was like, how any of it actually worked. It was just magic. And
But you could
eventually
infer it over time, because Lua is very real.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I sort of figured it out. But I was still like a lot younger, and instead of me doing stuff properly, I thought I can just change this, and if it works, then I don't have to think about it anymore, and I don't have to learn. But eventually, when I think me and Zelly were doing more like Payday map stuff, I had to start learning how some Lua worked to do most of the things I wanted to do. Because I always liked adding actual features to levels, which also meant I never got to finish the levels that I was making for custom heists.
Get caught up on trying to make something work that takes a lot of effort and time, and then ends up being the thing that stalls the project. I've done that exact thing before.
Yeah, and I wasn't very good at not doing that, because every time I started something, I thought I could just do this and it'd be really big. Let's make a giant open world, like Warzone arena thing, PvE game mode based on what Raid was meant to be.
Yeah, and then we also realized why that was a bad idea.
Like leveling up systems, loading stuff, making sure like assets would have been performant. And then we actually started messing with the levels and thought, like the areas and stages, and realized that this isn't going to work.
Yeah, we did make a lot of interesting stuff, and some of them actually did make it to Raid. Like the mantling system that I made for Raid, that was originated from Warzone.
It is funny though, because you can always see the Payday or former Raid players just jump up it and ignore, because it never was a thing in Raid or Payday 2. So all these people always jump up those small walls with a distance, and I was like, oh, you can mantle them now!
Yeah, but then there's also a lot of people who just instinctively do it and don't even register that they did it.
Yeah.
Which is like, that also means that, hey, then it's that, like, seamless.
The seamlessness is part of why I think a lot of Payday 2 players had issues playing Payday 3, getting into it, is if you do not vibe with the new movement mechanics, you are... You said it yourselves, people do really like how it feels to move in Diesel. They'll complain about it, but there is something that, like, motion has a lot of weight to it in this engine.
There is a funny thing that happens when we like test a feature or like debug something. We'll just be in the camp or in Skillzoo, which is one of Zelly's testing maps, and we'll just, after being done with the testing, constantly jump around left, right, because and just start talking for hours, because it's just that much of a feeling to move in this engine that it's somewhat relaxing, I guess. It's weird.
Yeah, it happened in Payday 2 as well, when I was making like custom heists with people where like we just test the map, and then, you know, you usually test maps first on like normal to just get a thing for feel, and then you just realize that, wait, we've been just jumping around for an hour. It just feels good. There's very few games that have that. The only other game I can think of that I could do that was Sanctuary in Borderlands 2, where you're just jumping around.
Yeah, climbing up the buildings, trying to get out of the map.
Yeah.
I am kind of surprised to report how much alone the Blood Sugar card, like the Halloween cards, made a difference in people going, oh, Raid has been updated. Somebody would join the chat and be like, oh, Raid, lol, whatever happened to that? And then when they say, yeah, they kept updating it, the next thing is usually like, but not like new stuff, right? Just bug fixes?
Oh, yeah, I saw that, yeah.
They're not doing actual stuff. And the most comments we get on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it is also for consoles. Consoles when? And it's always
like, this game's alive, ? Or console update when?
It's, I guess, I don't know if it's a failure on our part or not.
You know what the Blood Sugar thing does? It shows a visual element on screen that is so out of what the original game's vision was that I had so many comments asking, Blood Sugar? Lol, what is that? What's the Blood Sugar thing? Was that a mod? And To which I can tell people, no, it's a new card they added, and that prompts them to have noticed that something new is in the game. I wish that players were more willing to notice mechanical changes like that, but it does take something so visual. Wait, are we on a timer for inquiring intel?
Yeah, nobody was listening.
It's all good. This is randomizer ourselves.
I think one of the first ones was the half track, but I don't remember. Also, we were rambling for an hour, and we probably went so far off your questions list, but...
I started writing a questions list, and then realized it would probably be better to have a conversation after I spent some time talking to you all that was more direct, because I was so nervous about interviewing Ilya, and then I, like, in the first 10 minutes just threw out all the, like, he was so easy to talk to.
Yeah, I had the same when I first talked to him. When he was teaching me how to use the editor.
It's this funny thing, right? Because there's this guy that made Payday the Heist, like, made most of the levels in that. And I remember that Payday the Heist is a game that my dad's Steam account family shared to mine, and I played it, like, and I was like, oh, this is a good... And this guy I'm just talking to, it's like, what?
Yeah, the whole thing is, like, super surreal to think, like, I remember all these people back in the day, and they were, like, you know, like, they were, like, so famous, and everyone knew them, and, like, wow, and then I'm just talking to him. Back in the day, I was one of those people who didn't care at all about Raid. I played the demo, and I was like, oh, this kind of sucks.
I didn't even know about... I didn't even know about Raid. Like, Matt Mathelzor told me when I was doing the... I sent you the whole story before, the month story, right? But then Matt told me, oh, there's this guy, Ilya, and he made, like, this other game on Diesel. Maybe you should talk to him.
I remember, like, Matt was one of the first people that when I saw him, like, oh shit, you made that Shadow Map mod back in the day. I remember that. I understand how players can arrive at saying things that I think are silly, like, if modders can do it, why can't the developers? When often it's priorities, and a lot of these modders can't be doing what they're doing for money because there's no employment for them. Either they're too young or they're not in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, the industry has a structural problem, in my opinion. I mean, I don't really want to go there for long, but I always feel like the structural problem of handling a game like a regular development product is what gets you there, right? Like, if you go, oh, I'm gonna make a game, but I'm gonna have agile, and I'm gonna have all these, like, classic development frameworks that are made for software, like regular software. Games are creative. They're an art piece. They're an expression of yourself and your ideas and your creativity. So you can't just go, oh, today you are working on this random system if you can't stand behind it, if you don't understand the core concept of it. That's my view of it, at least. But
I think that's the inherent problem of trying to structure a studio for we can make these games quicker at scale with higher expectations, because we'll just hire more people to do it. Like, I had this very naive view when I was younger of, like, the more people that are hired, like, that can only be a good thing. That's more jobs, more people working on it. But how do you communicate with those people? How does anyone understand the vision if you have, what, Starbreeze had over 250 employees at some point, over 300? And now not, but they still try the same strategies of everyone is in their own department. You just present the final product that you have. We give you feedback to tweak it. And the whole industry operates this way. It produces good games often by accident, and then those games are so successful that they're pointed to as, like, see, the system works. It only costs whoever we fired.
Yeah, that's, like, all the time. Like, even when you see, like, indie companies, like, oh, we made one indie game, so let's just scale up the ass now.
Yeah.
And it's like, you immediately lose that factor. Like, you didn't need to become that big. Because that's, like, my problem now as well with my real work, where when I started working there, it was a very small company. We were only 4 or 5 people. And then over the years, we kept scaling up and up and up, and then we were bought by a big company. And now we're getting to that point where, like, I don't even know who works there most of the time. It's like, it's not fun anymore because it's too big, too many layers. It's like, it was so much better and we were so much more efficient when we were smaller. For Payday 2, the last few years, they did have a small team with more agency, and it worked relatively well. It wasn't flawless, but it worked for the most part. The community was... they were okay with how things were going. So it worked better.
There was definitely some interesting stuff added.
I think a lot of the problems came from things that were unrelated to those updates but happened around those updates, and it made people feel the same way, like licensed content being removed, new bugs being like introduced just through side effects.
Yeah, that was the last like hurrah, but I mean like the whole revival era, they had a small team with more agency on what they wanted to do, and it worked. Like, you know, Payday kept getting more popular during that time. And it kept getting a lot of new players. And, you know, now most of the community comprised of people who started playing after the revival era.
I also think a lot of players have self-selected, because a lot of those older players who really want to go play the older version of the game literally are doing that now. They either are down patching or playing Restoration mod.
Yeah, I used to be one of the people for, like, on Restoration mod kind of thing. I used to play it, and then I helped them with it. So that was fun.
Yeah, that's how you started level designing, isn't it?
Yeah, that was when I started doing more focused maps. I think they're still working on one of the levels that I was making. It's like this giant warehouse. It was probably bigger than Big Bank, how like large the map was. And I think I did it in like 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, with the models and everything.
I guess that's the big difference between the modding like approach and development, is the idea of working harder because you don't have a budget to make it more. If you're a modder, you will just find another way to do it, even if it's just brute forcing doing it yourself with no tools, no assets, no resources, which is the same way they did it early with Payday the Heist and 2, and also Raid, whatever tools were around, whatever we have access to.
It's this you gotta make it work approach, right? Like this, well, this needs to work somehow. We want to do this cool feature somehow, so whatever, like there's gotta be a way we can make it work.
They're gonna get rid of the train.
And it's also, with Raid especially now, with us, because it's all a passion-led project, we can do a lot of things differently, right? Like we can do things and say, you know what, I want to try this. I want to see if this might be a good idea to do or might be fun.
There's also the factor in where like actual developers are usually sane people, so they just work on the game when it's their, you know, job hours. Which is like modders, they'll just spend weeks on end every night working on their stuff.
That craziness is passion by another name for the thing you're working on. It's a lot easier to have that passion for a game you got started playing because you already saw a potential final version of it that you know you enjoy. I think people who work on the game are also seeing all of the moving parts it takes to get. You're probably getting that now with Raid, where the more you work on it, the more little things that other players enjoy, you'll start to be like, oh yeah, that. Yeah, forgot about that. It's been so long, it's so far away from it.
Yeah, there's a lot of those. They're like, oh yeah, we did that. There's just like a lot of times I think Rex also like makes like a post like, did we do this?
Like, yeah, was this always in the game or was this added?
That whole thing was, because as I said, like originally I just didn't really think much of Raid. I thought it was a joke. But then when Rex and Leon did update 21, and that was like, I got like in the beta, I was like sort of thing. It's like, that's why, you know, like you realize like, wait, maybe there is something here.
Maybe it can be saved, yeah.
Yeah.
We released update 20 and a lot of people in the Steam forum were very surprised, like, oh, what the fuck, Raid, an update? What, how, why are you doing this? And because that gained like a decent amount of traction, or a surprising amount of traction rather, Ilya was like, well, can we do some more changes? Like, can we improve some smaller stuff, fix some of the most glaring issues, the biggest bugs? So we started making a list of like the biggest bugs the game had that we might want to fix, but I am a C++ programmer, I'm not that good with Lua. So we need a Lua person, so I can focus on the engine and that sort of issues, you know, DirectX 11 upgrade that happened, other upgrades.
I think, yeah, Ilya randomly DM'd me saying if I wanted to mess with the editor, I think. That's where it started, I think.
Yeah, but it was something along the lines of like you made like some mods because we're also inviting some of the modders. We're also inviting some of the modders into a group to like the Payday modders to help with some stuff, and maybe to make some mods.
There was a little bit of interest in the modding room, so I ended up doing some Lua mod for like the new equipment UI where like you can toggle off parts.
Oh yeah.
I worked on that before I actually had raid source. Like was the first thing I did.
Yeah, Rex made that as a mod, and then he sent also a lot of stuff to Ilya and talked to Ilya about stuff he was working on and the mods he was making. And then one day I DM'd Ilya and was like, hey, you know what? This Rex guy, he's making a lot of cool shit. We should get him onto our team, I guess, or we should make a team rather, and he should join us and work with us on the game, and to work on some updates. And then Ilya literally replied to me way ahead of you with a screenshot of him asking Rex if he wants to play with the official level editor to make a level.
Yeah, and I think I said something like, I don't think I can say no.
Yeah, exactly. You said like, oh, I don't think I can say no to that. I specifically remember, and that was quite funny, when Zelly started work on the new skill system for 22. It was so fun because people think like, oh, when you make like a skill system, you start making a spreadsheet of like all the values and all the numbers, right? The only spreadsheet that ever existed of the skill system was like a, okay, let's write down ideas for skills. Let's just give them like,
what happens if we do this? This sounds fun.
Exactly.
Let's think about numbers later.
Yeah, and then then they just get, because it's Lua, right? So they just get prototypes. Zelly just types them into VS Code and then clicks Lua reload. It reloads the game and you just test them. And you try with the numbers, and then you lower the numbers to see if it fits.
Is that how we got Silver Bullet? The like wall hack
that's the new one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was an idea we had.
Such an important thing to when you're in your development tunnel, right? Of 3 people, and you make something, you test it, and you go, wow, this skill feels amazing. Like, this is such a cool skill that we thought of. And then you give it to the close tester people, and they're like, wow,
I don't get it.
This is way too OP, like this is way too strong. And you're like, oh really? Man, maybe we should lower it a bit.
Yeah, like the raw numbers itself, you shouldn't sweat as much. So like, it doesn't need to be statistically, this is all this good, that good. It's like, this feels good, it doesn't feel too strong. And people think it's okay as well, then it's fine.
It's just so many things in this engine that we've like just internalized and recognized everything about it.
We should settle this now. This has come up as more and more of a topic recently. How do you all feel about the adage used of Diesel is a quote-unquote racing game engine? This pisses a lot of people off.
Yeah, that's very annoying because if you look at the games that they made on Diesel, they had the first game, which wasn't even really a racing game. It was like a tube thing. The second one was the racing derby game. And then on that point forward, from 2004 or 6, only shooters have been made on the engine.
And also Lua was added in 2006 with the first shooter made on the engine.
Wow, that's a big deal to note. Yes, that's a massive change in the general structure of how the engine gets used.
In Ballistics, everything was C++, so the application was coded C++. And in that racing derby game, for a singular game, they used Diesel script.
Is that a complete misconception that Diesel was involved in that other racing game? Oh god, I don't remember my own fucking video.
Flat Out?
Flat Out, that's it, thank you, yes.
Yeah, I have no clue where that came from. I don't think Flat Out was on Diesel. Moby
Games claims it is, but I think they're wrong, and I got it wrong as a result.
We have no, considering the games we've looked at, I've looked at Flat Out as well to confirm that theory, and the structure does not seem similar. If you look back at, as I said, Ballistics, the Ballistic scene format stuck around, like the idea of scenes stuck around to this day, and it doesn't have that, so... That's a thing that stuck around since 2001, so it's like a trademark, essentially, of Diesel, right? Like a thing that every Diesel game would have.
Yeah. But if you look at a game like Magicka 2, which was on BitSquid, you will see that it looks like Diesel.
Well, yeah, BitSquid doesn't count.
Yeah,
but like that's more like Diesel than that.
Yeah.
We were joking about it, I don't remember when, where like, if you look at the games, Diesel is pretty much the backbone of the Swedish co-op games industry.
It really is. It really honestly is. I have stumbled across funny comments and code on that note of editing other people's mods to figure out how they work to make your own. The amount of times I've seen someone tag something in a mod as, this is so stupid, but it's how Diesel works, or I have to do this trick to make it work in Diesel.
Oh, I remember that from BLE.
Yeah, since you have to do like hooks and go around local functions that are just
It's the
hard-coded really badly.
most of the time for us, or for most people that I've like talked to, because I've gotten to talk to some people that were on Payday 2 Strike Team as well, like for the Revival era. And one of the funniest things I've heard when I've showed them like some screenshots of what we did on Raid at the time, and they were like, "Wait, what? That was always a feature? Like that always existed in the engine, and you could just use it?" Because there's no documentation on it, right? Like we have the time to look through the actual engine source code, because we know I know C++, Ellie knows C++, so we can look through the actual engine source code and see, oh, this is a feature, because we have time to clean it up. But they didn't have that luxury, right? Like they didn't have the time to just rummage through the engine for months to see what it can do.
Most of the things that we've been hearing and we're believing that like, oh, Diesel can't do this, it's just coded in. Lip syncing. Diesel always had lip syncing. It's the same system Half-Life 2 used.
Lip syncs, face animations, not even like the poorly rigged ones, like actual faces.
Face animations, yeah, like Diesel games in the past had them. There's also water physics, water buoyancy. There's like proper water simulations.
Yeah, cloth
There's
physics.
cloth physics, leg IK. All of that is just in the engine, but it's buried away, and then they left it to rot.
They clearly, Overkill clearly forgot about a lot of it because, you know, the Big Bang trailer had animated faces, but they had to rig them with bones instead of face animations.
And instead of using the morph target system that's specifically made for animated mouths.
And is still like heavily mentioned in the lore for like sequence managers.
Yeah, the stuff was made by Grin for like Bionic Commando and that sort of stuff, right? And for Fortress, the cancel. Yeah, that's what that stuff was made for. And then when they made Payday the Heist, they're like, well, we don't need water physics. We don't have time to update this to Physics 3, whatever. And just comment it out, like disable the feature. It's not needed. Oh, we don't need facial animations. We'll just put masks on them. Whatever. We don't need that feature. Disable it. And then people just forgot.
If we ever get rigged, I do want to try to set up a thing.
It'd at least be something to mess with, yeah. Like, we did play around with the IK thing, but we found out all of the rigs are, like, not quite set up for it, right?
Yeah, so
the legs are the feet are pointing the wrong way.
Yeah, the indie engine, we'll have to look at it, and we just didn't get around to it. There's a lot of things, or like, okay, you know, obviously, if there's just 3 people, you have 10 million things to do. You can't do all of it.
It's like, yeah, let's maybe work on content instead of making people's feet stick to the ground.
Let's make that clear to people. Like, it is you 3 working on this with occasionally getting some design ideas or maps from Ilya. That's my understanding of it. It is you 3. You are the developers at this point.
Yeah.
We are the developers. We are the handlers, the content makers. We handle the updates ourselves. We do use the stuff on Steam. We upload the builds. Like that's all under our fingers. You're gonna get barreled because you're standing at the barrel wall.
Oh, barrel. Yes, understood. I thought I was like barreled over. No, the barrels they roll at you. Correct.
Yeah,
yep,
there
it is.
Yeah, there it is. Oh yeah, have you stepped in the landmine here?
Stepped in the landmine? There's a landmine here?
If go into that little rock pile.
Into this.
Ow.
Oh! I think I got downed before I could defuse it.
Yeah, we need to put more landmines. We need to put more landmines on other maps.
Yeah, we had people like camping in that little rock, so I thought it would be funny to stick a landmine in there.
This game inherently was limited by its time setting, so you could have these very linear, like, I just rigged this to blow up and the cops do it. They don't have bomb suits, like, or in this case, the Nazis do it. They don't... You can mess with technology at a level that does not get, like, ridiculous that like people complain about that all the time in Payday. Of,
Yeah,
like,
but the thing is, you're not bound to that. You're making a 4-person co-op shooter. The only thing that binds you to that is yourself. If you yourself go, yes, I don't want this in this game because it's like not realistic or something. That's just you as a developer saying, I want to limit myself there. But we can go, oh, we want like a crazy like contraption that didn't really exist in real life, but is like somewhat time period appropriate, and it's like, yeah, whatever, that works.
Yeah, we don't want to too dumb either, but it's like something that you can like buy, right? Like, yeah, sure, this could have been a thing. We do have a little bit of rivalry because Raid is not a serious game.
Yeah,
it is.
It wanted to be at its start, but it certainly has not arrived there.
And now we cannot turn it back, so might as well just lean on it.
Yeah, we embrace it, right? Like we go, this is just a joking kind of game, right? Like this doesn't take anything that's happening seriously, so we can do some we can have some leniency in how we add some stuff.
I mean, I also don't have the confidence that we could handle it seriously. Like in myself personally, I don't know if I could handle it seriously, so I would rather not.
Yeah, and especially because of the matter that the game is based on, right? Like it's one of those things that if you want to handle that in a serious way and want to approach it in a this is like war's bad kind of way, then you can only do that with a lot of research, with a lot of historical accuracy, all of that, right? Where, this
it's easier
this is not what this game is, right?
Yeah, easier not to.
And even if you do that, you end up sometimes sticking something silly in, like Sniper Elite, and it's ball busting.
Yeah.
True.
Extremely accurate, like sniper rifle models, but you can explode people's balls. Very fun.
Weapon upgrades, some of them were not real ones. They were instead concepts. They were just like blueprints drawn out.
Yeah,
ideas.
prototypes, concepts, and like weird gangster nonsense.
Jay pointed out to me that the fully upgraded Colt is the one that was found on, I believe, John Dellinger's.
Yeah, parts of it was a build.
There's a lot of lore there that is based off of real things and could lead you to learning about those real things, or it certainly led me to looking up what they were based on. But they don't have to be portrayed realistically. Just portraying them at all leads people to learning about them existing in the first place.
Yeah, that's kind of what I would, if we ever get the opportunity to make new weapons, I would like to keep that, where it's like, this was, even if it wasn't a real gun, like someone did prototype it, like we didn't make any of this up ourselves, right? But it's like, this is not just some like, hey, here's a laser rifle. I don't want to go that far.
Exactly, like stay somewhat grounded.
Oh, actually, I was gonna bring this up passively, but I'm curious how you all feel about the well rod.
Unfinished.
You think?
Was, in my opinion, it was a very, very bad thing to add at the point that they added it. Where they clearly were like the last update, it was rushed out, they didn't really have animators anymore, so they hacked something together. And releasing it into the game as the last update, essentially, one of the last updates, was insane, because it breaks the entire idea of how the stealth works.
Yeah, they updated it like it was a stealth update, I think, and they also added enemy respawns in maps, which didn't really work very well.
It needs the former idea for the latter to work. The idea, like, almost a silent assassin style play.
Yeah, adding a well rod, you have to have a way to make it so you can't just kill everyone on the map. But when you do that, you just sort of make normal stealth annoying, because you killed everyone, you tried really hard stabbing everyone, and now more enemies show up.
Yeah, I understand why, like, it is that point where it's like half like desperation of like, okay, maybe we can get the stealth crowd, right? Just have the stealth stuff in. Maybe that can get us new players, which I do understand. Like, we also have that issue now, right? Where it's like, what can we do to get more players? Like, oh, maybe we can do like a Halloween event, and that didn't really work. And then, like, okay, if we do a new map, and that sort of worked, but not as well as we wanted. So now we're like telling like, okay, we need content quickly. So now we are trying to add like the ability to play any operation you want, like operation stages individually, and also having like randomized like shuffle operation, right? Where it's just like, hey, here's a
set of maps in a row.
Yeah, random maps. Like, because we cannot make content quick, but maybe if we allow people to play those when they want, that's like thing. So you know, you always have this like, what can we do to get more players? And I think that was also the same scenario where like, okay, maybe if we get stealth players, that'll help the game. And it's like it just didn't work out.
I find the well rod to be surprisingly good as a weapon to use. And see, this is interesting. I was going to call it loud.
In the current game, it took a lot of work to make it work well.
Did it used to be more hampered?
Yeah, there was a point where the well rod worked too well for stealth, so I like reduced the accuracy, made the ammo really low, and then it just kind of sucked, and people didn't want to use it in loud at all. Or they wanted to use it in loud, but they couldn't. So then I had to change it, really carefully balancing the headshots and the fall off to make it work right and work really well with skills. Yep. Oh, yeah, instantly died.
I didn't know that.
Oh, Rex was an airplane for a minute?
I saw that too.
No, you didn't. Cut it.
Let's bring the well rod and watch it occasionally randomly snap in my hand.
Could we fix that now that we have animation tools? Because we have animation tools now.
Oh, so that'll be coming
I
down
do
the line.
love the random plunger.
Because we can do unrigged animations, we just can't do rigged animations. The guns are not rigged, so...
It's time.
Technically, we can fix that.
Oh god.
No, we're not gonna do that.
Removed crab people would be quite the patch note.
No, April 1st is every card that drops is crab people.
Stealth
bricks. Shh.
Gold bar is so great.
Oh.
So here's a funny story. I didn't land a single shot, and you all got them anyways. Good lord.
Yeah, because we're devs, you know, we're pros.
Professional players.
Interesting. It was like how long-lived these? Oh.
How did you
go up?
I jumped off the sniper point.
You can get up there? I never tried.
Yeah, there's a ladder on the other side.
I never thought to look.
There's a specific trigger that will in loud spawn a sniper on the opposing roof so that you have a sniper sniping at you.
I don't know if it actually works though.
Nobody knows if it works. I saw the trigger in the editor and it never got it to trigger, so. One of the funniest features for me, how it happened, is the crosshairs, now that I'm looking at random stuff. It's like...
Oh, right.
The crosshairs was literally just Rex one day making crosshairs because he wanted to. And then we had crosshairs.
Yeah, some people were randomly talking about like they want a motion dot so they can use it as a crosshair. So then we added a motion dot. It's like, alright, fine. And then I was getting annoyed seeing people always using the motion dot as a crosshair, so I just implemented a crosshair. And that, yeah, I implemented it in a really customizable way as well, so people can play with it in mods.
That's a real concern I'm realizing about the line between modding, cheating, and base game. If most players are already going to get a mod or get some kind of change to add it, why not make it base game functionality if it will cut down on crashes?
Yeah, also, one of the things that I love that we now do is just options. Add options. Whatever. Add accessibility options, add random features you can toggle on and off, like the icons on the ammo counters. You can turn that off if you don't like that. You can just turn it off.
With reason, of course. There are stuff that's like a lot of really hard to add, or it's just there are stuff that I wouldn't want to add because it just clashes like kind of the idea. You know, like the Toxod like counters for everything on the map. That's one thing I would never want to add, obviously.
I'm with you on that.
I don't want you to know, like, hey, there's 22 crowbars on the level right now. That's not something that should be in the main HUD, ever.
It also connects with the inherent lack of information the raiders can have access to, because we don't have a constant radio access like you do in Payday, where it's implied, the HUD is implied to be information you have available to you because you have this communication with Bane. In this game, you should only have access to things that you should be able to know. I was told by Ilya that a different team, a team at Starbreeze, were the people who were balancing enemies in this game, who were handling all that.
Yeah, we've seen
I wonder who that was.
We've seen context of that. We've seen commits of that in old commit logs. That like Starbreeze had like a balancing branch and did like balancing changes.
Yeah, I think that was like a big problem with that before release there was a huge balance patch, and that was the reason why on release you had 1 billion enemies just running at you. And you know, that was the problem with, like, in Payday you have a lot of enemies, but you also have the kit to deal with it. But in Raid you didn't have the kit to kill 1 million enemies. You had like weaker weapons and weaker characters, and it's just when you had your Warcry maybe you could, but otherwise you would just get swarmed.
I think the philosophy of there should always be something on screen for you to shoot is not necessarily one I agree with, but I understand how to get there. I just don't think this game's maps were designed with that in mind. So
that's kind of problem I had as well with Raid, where I think for most of the Raid the levels weren't like designed around what the gameplay was. So like the gameplay is very, like even the gameplay itself was very confused, because you know the gameplay you have no armor, you only have health, and you have to pick up health kits. So the gameplay was very aggressive. You had to kill the enemy, otherwise they killed you. But then the levels didn't really account for that, so you had like these wide open levels with not many resources put on them. So it's two clashing ideas, kinda. But like they want you to kill enemies fast, but then they don't give you breathing room to not die, because you just have the big open area. And then what do? You know, like on Hunters, like where do you go to not die? There's no position where you don't die.
I was about to bring up, like, well, I guess, you know, enemies dropping health, but that was something that was added later, if memory serves, right? Enemies...
No, they did drop health, but you had to pick them up manually.
That's what it was. That's right. Automatically picking up things on the ground if you need them, as opposed to having to keep an eye on that yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do limit it a little to like only the really small packets.
So you have to make a decision for a more expensive resource if you want to spend it in that moment.
Yeah, which is, I think it makes sense, because if you have the medium pickup, you wouldn't want to pick that up if you're missing like 2 health. So that's like a conscious thing, like, yeah, I want this. But the small ones
look at these power transformers. They're not from Germany. They're American pole transformers.
Wow,
they're
you're right.
Inaccurate.
Poland technology.
They're not accurate.
Yeah, there's a few wrong assets. I think in the very early versions we saw like a British telephone box.
There's also a newspaper from 1945 talking about how the Nazis will be sued for the war. but it's in German, so I assume nobody could read it.
I had to rewrite how we export item inventory generator stuff, and at one moment I accidentally gave some people like hundreds of cards, so they got lucky.
Oh, yeah.
Whoa!
Yeah, even
that truck exploded and killed me instantly. Oh.
No. Yep. Hold on. There you
it's
go.
Okay. Special Pumpkin is here.
Yeah, I shot
Did that work?
Yes, I am coming back.
Okay.
Ah, okay.
Okay, this is fun. I like those.
Why don't those have like a fade distance?
I always thought they... Actually, it might have been because I changed how the contours work in Raid. So they're probably... Yeah.
Yeah.
I could probably just add it to the material.
Yeah, we need to fix them.
This is the world's most niche argument in the Payday community of which contour is better, the flat outlines or the ones with the slight glow around it.
The fuzzy border or sharp. I have realized sharp sucks because when you play on 4K, you can't actually see it.
Correct. I'm on 2K and it's already a problem.
Yeah, it was only ever written to be on like 720p.
What's something you don't think people would notice that you have made a change to that you think is a big change? Like something that players would look at the game now and not realize wasn't there before makes a big difference, like the loot carrying, anything like that.
DirectX 11. That's one of those things that I worked on where like a lot of people just don't even notice.
It's not a big thing, but not something that I think most people would notice. Letting you switch weapons while running.
Oh, I do that. I do that a lot and didn't even think about it. You're right.
Yeah, because in Payday 2 and originally in Raid, if you switch weapons, your sprinting stopped.
It keeps exploding.
That's one of those little things that I added that, like, I don't think many people notice, but it very much contributes to the game feeling smoother.
I think
mounting as
one
well.
that I can name. Yeah, I think that's a little bit more obvious though. I think one of the less obvious changes I've made is to how high the player can jump combined with the gravity of the player.
Oh yeah, the
So
gravity.
actually, yeah, the gravity has been changed since Raid to Payday. And people kind of, I don't think, notice it. But,
Yeah, but
they do
you're
like
not
the movement more.
Yeah, because in Payday 2 and in Raid originally, when you jump, you like float a lot, so I just increased the gravity a bit and it feels a lot better.
At the end of the day, that is one of the things that you as a game developer, or at least we think that way, you have to realize where it's like, yeah, but I don't like it that way. It doesn't matter what you like. The people play your game. You're not making this game for you solely to think it's cool. If 20 of your players, and if your player base is small, if like half your player base or most of your player base says what you did sucks, then it sucks, period. It doesn't matter what you think at that point. You're making the game for other people, for them to have fun, if that's your goal at the end of the day.
Yeah, there's like definitely, there are definitely situations where you have to stand your ground and say like, hey, no, I stand by this. But if like, your overwhelming amount of people in the community say that, no, I don't like this, and they're leaving for it, then, at that point, if you stay on your ground, then you're not gonna achieve anything positive out of it. So it's hard to get to that point where like you have to accept, okay, well, they don't like what we did. There was a lot of fun with balancing as well, where like we changed some stuff and people don't like it. Like, okay, how can we come to a compromise about it?
I think that's how the Wellrod got to where it was.
Future plan question that I'm sure a lot of people who play this game actively are wondering. Any ideas for the truck coming back or taking more?
Yep, that is the original idea for the map. It's meant to leave when the bombers arrive, and then when they kill the bombers, the truck comes back in a random location. But they never finished it, so they just made it one location that always doesn't randomize.
So
yeah, the problem with these maps is just the scripting is so ass.
Oh yeah, this map is so bad. Like, there's layers and layers of like scripting just built on top of itself, and it makes no sense. I have to like throw half of it away, I swear.
A lot of developers, I think it's like a big problem as well. A lot of developers nowadays, they were just taught in school, and they were taught the basics of how to make like this type of game, but they never really taught like how to handle, when there's a crisis, like, oh shit, well, how did this go wrong? What can we do about it? I think that's one of the things they never really get taught.
So you've had a lot of time to kind of learn how to crisis manage. So what are the future plans? Like, I'd say you're kind of, at least from the public's perspective, out of the crisis and are now in the picking up the pieces after the crisis stage.
Yeah, we're in a different crisis now.
That's a good way to put it. It's a new level of the crisis.
It's a never-ending cycle. It's game dev, but
yeah, it's now the crisis of, okay, how can we actually, because we got a lot of players, but then we couldn't keep them for long. So now that's crisis, like, what can we do to actually keep them?
What have you got in mind for features, additions, even small things, big things?
For small things, the one that we already talked about is the randomized operations and being able to pick any of them we want. Because, that's a lot of just technically not new, but new accessible content that you can do. So you have a slightly bigger map pool at your disposal. that's like what we're trying short term. We're also doing like daily bounties, what Rex has been testing, which is like you basically get a randomly generated card out of all the possible effects on the map, and then if you beat that, then you can like get rewards, which we're still figuring out what kind of rewards we can get, like, you know, cards or gold or cosmetics or stuff like that.
As inspired by a mod within the raiding community.
There's hopes, I guess. That's what we can call it. There's hopes that we can go into a direction where we can make some paid DLC and have some funding for future updates, right? Like get models paid for, get some sound spot, that kind of stuff.
There is another, like, obviously we are working on like a map. I think, Rex, you also started another one, because of course you did.
That was mostly to test editor stuff for fun. It's like a tinker map.
There is like the next map we are trying to, which, you know, we were hoping that the next map would be out by this time roughly, but then a lot of stuff.
Then Halloween happened.
Yeah.
Oh, not even Halloween.
I will not ask you for any hard deadlines. Then
No.
giving hard deadlines is the gaming industry's biggest folly right now. I want to have more confidence in people, but often there is a lot of scrambling that's involved that still produces something perfectly acceptable.
Yeah, people really don't plan.
Yeah, I mean, all of our updates came together literally last minute, because
I think some of our best ones are like, we did them in 2 weeks because we thought it was funny.
yeah, but then there's
That's
some of the ones like
interesting.
the Halloween event that almost took 2 months. And
Yeah,
we thought,
the
like,
Halloween event was miscalculated probably. It was like, oh yeah, we should do something, so we have an in-between update before we do the map, you know, before we release a new map. And
I remember warning you about that when you first started the idea.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just I really wanted to have something, because it's like, in my mind, that was something that you kind of have to do.
Yeah, I think it didn't help that there was obviously no marketing for Halloween events.
It's a structural problem though, right? Like it's this thing of a lot of I personally, it's easy to say, right? I think a lot of our updates are pretty great. It's just nobody's aware that this game is getting
we
updates.
don't know how to market.
And we're all too stupid to figure out how we can spread awareness about it. So we're happy to do stuff like this, where it's like, well, we hope some people know this game is alive.
Oh, I think I got stuck here.
Oh,
that's my favorite.
Oh!
Oh, there you go.
Zelly.
Oh, he'll be back.
He'll be back, yeah. The game has safeties.
Nice. When does a game die? When it stops being played? When it stops being able to be played? Do games really just die? Or are they killed? All that makes a game is an idea with technology to showcase and interact with it. Arriving there is the whole thing, but so long as the idea exists and the technology works, so does the game, in any state. Raid isn't dead. It just doesn't have very many players. Someday it may be functionally unplayable on all readily available consumer hardware, as is true of literally any game, but it's not dead. You can boot it up and play it right now. It's more stable than ever before. It will still crash on occasion, but they've got a crash handler now, so that's something. Much of what Mug has had to do to get Raid stabilized is completely rewrite code that was originally simply copy-pasted from Payday 2. When Raid launched, the game was constantly doing pointless maths in the background. Checks for hostages, flashbangs, smoke grenades, functionality which could only ever be relevant in Payday. Until the Mug team rewrote the code, every single time a player was knocked down in Raid World War II, the game would do a check to see if that player was holding a blood vial. From No Mercy, in Payday, the heist. But who can say what code is superfluous and what, if deleted, will lead to hard crashes when the people who wrote it left the company with nothing but a / ask Ulf about it? Ilya, Starbreeze, and pretty much everyone involved in the story here still refers to the Mug team as modders. I think it's only fair at this point for them to be called developers, and paid as such. Doug team. If anyone at Starbreeze made it this far, first of all, are you okay? Second, give the lads some resources, and in your language, open up a new revenue stream. Don't make the team commit to a predatory live service model. That'd scare off the few players they've currently got. But there's a precedent for games concluding yet restarting development. Castle Crashers, Dungeon Defenders, and notably for the genre, Vermintide 2, getting the occasional paid DLC alongside free updates years on proves there's a market for these legacy games. Starbreeze already did this themselves, to shocking success in Payday 2's revival era. For a while. And now again, apparently? Let the Mug team earn their payday as well. Sure, these fellows are working with old code made by people before them, but that's also how Paydays the Heist 2 and 3 were all built, taking leftover code from previous projects and retrofitting it for new purposes. I'm not saying that modding should be seen as a guaranteed career path into the games industry. Ilya and the Mug team's trajectories, while remarkably similar, are still uncommon as far as the larger industry is concerned. These days, LinkedIn has unfortunately prioritized education and work certifications over on-the-ground experience. Modding should be something you do because you want to, because you enjoy it, because you found a game you love and a way to love it more. And if you think you're up to do it every day as labor, then you should be compensated for it, and perhaps someday the games industry will be right for you. But if you take that passion, that love, directed to an entry-level position where a manager is promising the moon reflected in your dazzled eyes, defend yourself. It sounds rough, but I mean it. That kind of whims-driven determination is routinely siphoned by corporations looking to sell passion packaged. These companies will convince you that the thing you're passionate about is actually whatever they already know how to market best. So stay passionate, but stay vigilant. Is your obsession with your creative work? Or are you being incentivized to see crunch as glorious so those late-night programming hours don't register as labor abuse? Is your drive being squeezed to do the work of 2 people so that your boss only has to pay 1 and can take the difference? I was obviously not paid to make this video. I'm not here to try and sell you on what's being promised for the future of Raid. I've seen some of it in beta testing. It's exciting and way more than I was expecting, but I've earned my stars marketing the game as is. Y'all can go check it out for yourselves when it's ready. I'm using the platform I've got here to show you the game Raid has become, that can be played today with just a hint of tomorrow. Why? Because I feel like I'm partially to blame for why it bombed in the first place. It could have influenced harder, I suppose. Because I think the game deserves a second chance, or at least a corrected record. Because I've been thinking a lot about shooting Nazis lately. Well, above all, I like the game. And I figured my subscribers could be some of the only people left on the planet who'd off another 3 hours worth of diesel fumes. So, I hope you enjoyed the trip. Play Raid if you think you'd have a time with it. It's damn cheap and will run on lower spec hardware. Or, don't play it, and spend your time and money as you see fit. But, I'll ask, if you do decide to try Raid and you get something out of it, think about penning a review of the game yourself on Steam, if you haven't already. I won't demand you be positive, but insist you be honest, and further that you understand how much that tick between mixed and mostly positive affects both Steam's search discoverability and potential players' psyche. This advice doesn't just go for Raid, but any title you purchase on platforms with reviews, Steam in particular. If you enjoy a game enough that you would recommend it if anyone were to ask, don't wait for them to ask. Leave a review. At least one sentence that shows you care and gives the algorithm something to work with. The creators of those projects read those messages, especially smaller ones. You shouldn't presume a response from those people just because of that, but knowing a work you spent countless hours of your life dedicated to seeing through is getting a positive reception, any reception, makes it easier to keep going and to keep working on the next project. Thank you all so much for sticking with me. Protect one another out there, and take it easy.
Where the world is more or less now is everything is either black or white, and I think you're trying to show the gray parts, which is where all the fun things are anyways. So that's good. And like my note on it as a developer is I probably learned more on Raid than on any other production I worked on. Maybe not the first game, in a real studio where everything was new, but You learn a lot from failures, basically, I'd say, and I think it's almost a little bit of a blessing that you got through one of those. It's still released. It's still like did not well, did okay, whatever, and you're still here. Like you can still continue. So it's good, and I learned a lot of things. And as you said, and you know, I never wanted to come off as it's the publishing fault it ended up as it did. And I hope I made it somewhat clear that I think the biggest finger to blame or to point is at me, because I was, you know, I took those decisions, and then I was influenced. I was this, I was that, but in the end, that's my name on the thing. So yeah, it's never as easy, and I hope that comes across as, you know, publishing failed or the developer sucks. It's a gazillion things. Like they went through so much during that point. We went through much, and then if you go into detail and like, where was I personally, you know? Because every person also has their inner fucking battles and all of that thing. So it's just a gazillion things. You just keep moving the canvas and make it as good as you can, because that's all you can do.